Hello everyone, and welcome to the DxD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was the lost heir of Lucifer and Nyx DxD Greek. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Shadows of Heritage. The dream always began the same way. Darkness so profound it felt tangible, wrapping around him like liquid silk. Then stars, impossibly bright, impossibly distant, puncturing the void. A woman's voice, achingly beautiful, whispering words in a language he almost understood. And beneath it all, a sense of power. Ancient, terrifying, familiar. Issei Hyodo jolted awake, sheets tangled around his legs, sweat beading his forehead despite the cool April morning. Dawn light filtered through his curtains, casting patterns across his bedroom floor that seemed to writhe and shift like living shadows. He blinked, and they settled into ordinary shapes. Third time this week, he muttered, running fingers through his disheveled brown hair. The dreams had started on his 17th birthday, exactly 1 month ago. Each night they grew more vivid, more insistent, as if something were clawing at the edges of his consciousness, demanding entry. His alarm clock displayed 6:15 a.m. School wouldn't start for another 2 hours. But returning to sleep wasn't an option. Not with the lingering sensation of cold fire running through his veins, making his skin feel too tight for his body. Issei rolled his shoulders, winching at the strange tension between his shoulder blades. His reflection in the bathroom mirror revealed nothing unusual, same brown eyes, same unremarkable features. Yet something felt fundamentally different. Like the atoms of his being were rearranging themselves into an unfamiliar configuration. Get it together, he told his reflection. You're just stressed about exams. The explanation rang hollow even to his own ears. His academic performance at Kuo Academy had never kept him up at night before. Quite the opposite. His friends Matsuda and Motohama regularly accused him of lacking ambition beyond ogling the female student body. Their assessment wasn't entirely unfair. Until recently, Issei's primary interest had indeed been the pursuit of what he'd termed his harem dream, a juvenile fantasy that now seemed curiously distant, like something from another lifetime. He splashed cold water on his face, trying to dispel the strange dichotomy in his thoughts. Part of him remained the ordinary teenage boy he'd always been, while another part observed his life with detached amusement, as if watching a character in a play performing a role that no longer fit. You're losing it, Hyodo, he muttered, reaching for his toothbrush. The bathroom light flickered overhead, and for a split second, his shadow on the wall seemed to move independently, stretching toward the ceiling with fingers elongated into claws. Issei froze, toothbrush halfway to his mouth. The shadow returned to normal, mimicking his startled posture. Definitely losing it. Kuo Academy buzzed with the controlled chaos of morning arrivals. Students clustered in the courtyard beneath cherry trees in full bloom, petals drifting like pale pink snow across the manicured grounds. The all-girls school had only recently become coeducational, and the male population remained significantly outnumbered, a fact that had initially delighted Issei but now barely registered in his awareness. He moved through the crowd with uncharacteristic detachment, peripherally aware of Matsuda and Motohama calling his name from the school steps. A strange sensation prickled along his spine, the feeling of being watched. Issei turned, scanning the courtyard. His gaze locked with that of a crimson-haired girl observing him from a second-floor window. Ryusuke Mori, third-year student and president of the Occult Research Club. School idol, untouchable goddess to the male student body. She wasn't merely glancing his way, she was studying him with unsettling intensity, her turquoise eyes narrowed in what might have been curiosity or concern. As their eyes met, she didn't look away or offer the polite smile she typically bestowed on underclassmen. Instead, her gaze sharpened further, head tilting slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. The morning bell shattered the moment. By the time Issei looked back, the window stood empty. Earth to Issei. Matsuda's voice finally penetrated his distraction. What's with you lately? You've been walking around like a zombie. Sorry, Issei replied, dragging his attention back to his friends. Not sleeping well. Motohama adjusted his glasses, light glinting off the lenses. Too busy having perverted dreams. You haven't joined us for reconnaissance at the Kendo Club all week. Just regular nightmares, Issei said, forcing a grin that felt mechanical. Besides, Murayama nearly broke your camera last time, remember? Their banter continued as they entered the building, but Issei's thoughts remained fixed on that crimson-haired figure at the window. Ryusuke Ramori had never so much as acknowledged his existence before today. Why start now? The answer came sooner than expected. As their math teacher droned through a lecture on differential equations, a soft knock interrupted the classroom monotony. The door slid open to reveal a petite girl with short white hair and expressionless golden eyes. "Excuse the interruption," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Hyodo Issei is needed by the Occult Research Club." 23 heads swiveled toward him in unison. The teacher frowned but nodded permission. "Take your textbook, Hyodo-kun." Issei gathered his belongings, acutely aware of the speculative murmurs rippling through the classroom. Kaneko Tuju, Ryusuke Ramori's enigmatic first-year kohai, waited in the hallway, R.E. guarding him with the wary assessment of a cat encountering an unfamiliar creature. "Follow me," she said simply, turning on her heel. What's this about?" Issei asked, lengthening his stride to match her surprisingly brisk pace. Kaneko's nose wrinkled slightly, as if detecting an odd scent. "Bushu will explain." They traversed the campus in silence, heading toward the old school building that housed the Occult Research Club. Issei had never been inside, though rumors abounded about what occurred within its weathered walls. Matsuda insisted it was where Ryusuke conducted arcane rituals involving virgin sacrifices. Motohama theorized it contained a secret photography studio for exclusive gravure shoots. Neither theory seemed particularly plausible. The building's interior proved disappointingly normal: worn wooden floors, high ceilings, dust motes dancing in sunbeams streaming through tall windows. Only when they reached the club room itself did the atmosphere shift. Heavy velvet curtains filtered the light to a crimson glow. Victorian furniture arranged around an ornate coffee table created the impression of a European salon transported to rural Japan. The air carried faint tea, races of incense and something else Issei couldn't identify, metallic, almost like ozone after lightning. Ryusuke Ramori sat behind an antique desk, her crimson hair cascading over one shoulder as she studied a leather-bound book. Beside her stood another familiar figure, Akano Himahima, the school's second-grade idol, her long black hair tied in a high ponytail, violet eyes regarding Issei with open curiosity. "Hyodo Issei," Ryusuke said without looking up. "Thank you for coming." Her voice carried unexpected gravity, as if his name contained syllables he'd never heard before. When she finally raised her eyes to meet his, Issei experienced a moment of disorientation. Her gaze seemed to penetrate beyond flesh and bone, examining something hidden beneath the surface of his being. "Please, sit." She gestured toward a velvet sofa across from her desk. Issei lowered himself onto the edge of the cushion. "Have I done something wrong, Ramori-senpai?" A faint smile curved her lips. "Not at all. Quite the opposite. In fact, you've done something rather interesting." Akano moved to a sideboard, preparing tea with precise, elegant movements. "What bushu means," she said, her voice ying a melodic lilt that somehow managed to sound both proper and vaguely suggestive, "is that you've begun to change in ways that have captured our attention." The statement sent an unpleasant chill down Issei's spine. "Change? I don't understand." "The dreams," Ryusuke said, closing her book with a soft thud. "They started on your 17th birthday, didn't they?" March 16th. The teacup Akano had just handed him nearly slipped from his fingers. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because we've been waiting for it to happen," Ryusuke replied. Her expression softened slightly at his obvious confusion. "Issei. May I call you Issei? What do you know about your adoption?" The question blindsided him completely. "My what?" Silence descended on the room like a physical weight. Ryusuke and Akano exchanged glances. "You weren't aware you were adopted?" Akano asked gently. "That's impossible," Issei said, setting down his untouched tea before he dropped it. "My parents would have told me something that important." Ryusuke leaned forward, elbows on the desk, chin resting on interlaced fingers. "They couldn't tell you what they don't know themselves. The memories they have of your birth, your infancy, they were created. Implanted." "That's insane." Issei stood abruptly. "I don't know what kind of weird club this is, but I'm not interested in joining if initiation means making up crazy stories about my family. Your shadow moves independently of your body, Kaneko said flatly from her position near the door. I saw it yesterday in the courtyard. So did Bushu. Issei froze, remembering that morning's bathroom incident. I was just tired, seeing things, and the dreams. Rias pressed, the woman speaking in a language that sounds like night itself. The sensation of power just beyond your reach. His legs suddenly unsteady, Issei sank back onto the sofa. How do you know about that? Because we know who your true parents are, Rias said quietly. And what that makes you. Before she could elaborate, a thunderous crash shook the building's foundation. The windows rattled in their frames, one developing a spiderweb of cracks from corner to corner. Kaneko moved to Rias's side with inhuman speed. Her small body tensed for action. Akeno glided to the window, pushing aside the curtain to peer outside. Era, she murmured, voice hardening despite the seemingly playful phrase. It seems our visitors have poor timing. Who? Issei began, but Rias cut him off with a sharp gesture. Akeno, prepare a barrier. Kaneko, get him to the basement chamber. Now, wait, Issei protested as Kaneko gripped his wrist with surprising strength. What's happening? Rias's eyes flashed with an unnatural light. They've found you sooner than we anticipated. The OLD Satan faction doesn't appreciate complications to their carefully laid plans. Another impact rocked the building, this one accompanied by screams from the direction of the main campus. Kaneko led Issei toward a door concealed behind a bookcase. What about the other students? He demanded, resisting her pull. If something's attacking the school, your classmates aren't the target, Rias said grimly. You are. The basement chamber resembled nothing so much as a ritual space from a fantasy novel. Arcane symbols covered the floor in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Candelabras cast flickering light across stone walls embedded with crystals that pulsed with internal radiance. Stay in the center, Kaneko instructed, positioning within a circle of symbols more elaborate than the others. Don't cross the lines. Can someone please explain what's happening? Issei demanded, frustration overriding fear. Why would anyone target me? I'm nobody. Kaneko regarded him impassively. You are the son of Lucifer and Nyx. That makes you very much somebody. The words hung in the air between them, nonsensical yet somehow resonant. With a truth Issei felt in his marrow. Before he could formulate a response, the ceiling trembled, dust and small chunks of plaster raining down. They're persistent, Kaneko observed, glancing upward. Footsteps thundered on the stairs, and Akeno burst into the chamber, her school uniform replaced by a traditional Miko outfit. Electricity crackled around her fingertips, casting her features in harsh blue light. Barriers holding, but not for long, she reported. They brought more forces than expected. Where's Grimoire Senpai? Issei asked. Bushu is negotiating, Akeno replied, her customary playfulness entirely absent. Though I suspect negotiations will prove futile. The faction sent Kryuzuri Asmodeus himself. The name meant nothing to Issei, but Kaneko's eyes widened seasonally, the first real expression he'd seen on her face. We need to move him, she said. This location is compromised. Akeno shook her head. No time. They've surrounded the building. She turned to Issei, violet eyes intense. We need to accelerate the awakening. It's the only way you'll survive what comes next. Awakening what? Issei's patience had evaporated entirely. Will someone please speak plainly for once? Your heritage, Akeno said, moving to one of the candelabras. The power you've inherited from your true parents. It's been sealed away, dormant, but the seal was designated to weaken on your 17th birthday. She began lighting additional candles placed at specific points around the chamber. We've been watching you since you transferred to Kuo, waiting for signs of the awakening. The plan was to guide you through it gradually, safely. But now we do it fast, Kaneko finished, taking position at what Issei suddenly realized was one point of a triangle, with Akeno at another. And probably painfully, a deafening roar from above drowned out Issei's response. The entire building shuddered as if struck by an earthquake. Chunks of ceiling crashed to the floor, one narrowly missing Issei's head. They've broken through the barrier, Akeno said, electricity intensifying around her hands. We're out of time, She began chanting in a language that hurt Issei's ears. Syllables that seemed to bend reality around them. Kaneko joined in, her softer voice creating harmonics that made the crystals in the walls pulse brighter. The circle surrounding Issei began to glow, symbols rising from the floor to orbit his body like luminous script. Pain blossomed behind his eyes, spreading through his body in waves of increasing intensity. He fell to his knees, gasping. "What are you doing to me?" he managed between clenched teeth. "Not doing," Kaneko corrected, never breaking the rhythm of her chant. "Undoing." The ceiling exploded inward. Through watering eyes, Issei glimpsed figures descending through the debris, human-shaped but wrong somehow, with two sharp features and eyes that glowed like coals. One landed directly in front of him, regarding him with contemptuous amusement. "So this is the abomination," the figure said, voice like gravel scraping metal. "Hardly seems worth the trouble." Lightning struck him squarely in the chest, driving him back several steps. Akeno stood with one arm extended, electricity arcing between her fingers. "You will not touch him," she declared, voice carrying an authority that belied her youth. The intruder laughed, brushing at his smoking jacket as if merely inconvenienced. Bold words from a half-breed serving a failure of a devil princess. He gestured casually, and a sphere of swirling darkness formed above his palm. "Let's see how that famous Himahima thunder fares against true demonic power." He hurled the sphere at Akeno, who countered with a bolt of lightning. The two forces collided, in a deafening concussion that knocked Issei flat on his back, driving the breath from his lungs. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Kaneko shout something. Then smaller explosions, grunts of pain, the sound of breaking furniture. The chamber had become a battlefield, and he lay helpless in the middle, paralyzed by pain as whatever, undoing, process the girls had initiated continued to tear through his body. A shadow fell across him. The first intruder stood over him, a blade of crackling energy forming in his hand. "Nothing personal, child," he said, raising the weapon. "But abominations like you upset the natural order. The son of Lucifer should be pure-blooded, not tainted with the ichor of Greek divinity." The blade descended. Issei, unable to move, could only watch it fall. Something erupted from within him, a primal instinct more ancient than rational thought. The shadows around him surged upward, coalescing into a barrier that caught the blade mere inches from his face. The attacker's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," he breathed. "The seal hasn't been." His words cut off as more shadows wrapped around his throat, lifting him bodily from the ground. Issei felt himself standing, though he had no memory of commanding his limbs to move. Power coursed through him, intoxicating, terrifying, familiar from 1,000 dreams yet entirely new to his waking mind. "What am I?" he heard himself ask, voice resonating with harmonics that weren't entirely human. The attacker struggled against the shadowy tendrils, eyes bulging. "Lucifer's bastard," he choked out. "Night spawn. Abomination. Those are labels," Issei replied, watching with detached fascination as the shadows tightened their grip. "Not answers, Issei." Rias's voice cut through his trance-like state. She stood in the ruined doorway, clothing torn, a bruise darkening one cheek, but her posture straight and commanding. "Release him." The shadows hesitated, as if torn between obeying her command and following a deeper, more primal directive. "He tried to kill me," Issei said, voice still carrying those strange undertones. "And he will answer for that," Rias replied, stepping carefully through the debris. "But not through execution without trial. That's not our way." "Our way," Issei echoed. "Devils have a code," she explained, reaching his side. "Rules. Justice. We're not the mind less evil that human mythology portrays." She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Please. This isn't who you are." The question of exactly who he was remained painfully unanswered, but something in her touch, warm, solid, real, anchored him. The shadows receded gradually, dropping the attacker to the floor where he lay gasping. Rias nodded approval. "Thank you." Issei looked around, truly registering the destruction for the first time. The chamber lay in ruins, support beams cracked, walls scorched with evidence of magical combat. Akeno stood over two unconscious figures, while Kaneko secured a third with what appeared to be magical restraints. There were 4 attackers total, Rias explained, following his gaze. The leader, Kryuzuri, escaped when your power manifested. He'll report back to his faction. Which means what, exactly? Issei asked, the unnatural resonance fading from his voice as exhaustion began to set in. It means you're no longer safe here, she replied. We need to move you to the underworld immediately. The what now? Issei blinked, wondering if he'd misheard. All will be explained, Rias promised. But not here. Can you walk? He took an experiment. Al stepped and nearly collapsed as his knees buckled. Akeno appeared at his side, supporting him with surprising strength. The awakening process wasn't completed properly, she said, concern evident in her voice. His body is trying to adapt to powers it doesn't understand. Then we stabilize him at my family estate, Rias decided. Prepare a transportation circle. As Akeno guided him toward a relatively intact section of floor, Issei finally asked the question that had been building since the conversation began upstairs. Why do you care what happens to me? Why were you watching me? Rias regarded him thoughtfully. Multiple reasons. Initially, orders from my brother, who sensed your sealed power when you moved into our territory. Then professional curiosity, the son of Lucifer and Nyx. Represents an unprecedented union of pantheons. And finally, she hesitated, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Personal interest. You're not what I expected, Issei Hyodo. Before he could press for clarification, Akeno completed whatever magical preparation she'd been conducting. A complex circle of light formed around them, symbols reminiscent of those that had surrounded Issei earlier but far more intricate. This will feel strange the first time, Rias warned. Try not to fight it. Light engulfed them, and the world dissolved into particles of luminescence. Issei's last conscious thought before darkness claimed him was to wonder what his math teacher would say when he failed to return to class. He dreamed again of stars and darkness, but this time the woman's voice was clearer. Her words almost comprehensible. She stood with her back to him, a figure of impossible beauty draped in a gown that seemed woven from the night sky itself, constellations shifting across its surface. My son, she said, finally turning. Her face remained in shadow despite the starlight all around them. At last you begin to awaken. Who are you? Issei asked, though part of him already knew the answer. I am Nyx, she replied, primordial goddess of night, daughter of chaos, mother to many divine children. A note of tenderness entered her voice. And mother to you, my most unexpected creation. And my father, Lucifer. The name carried weight, reverberating through the starscape surrounding them. Most beautiful of angels, most terrible of devils. We should never have crossed paths, never have created you. Her hand, cool as midnight, touched his cheek. And yet, having done so remains my only action without regret across eons of existence. Why didn't you keep me? The question emerged unbidden, carrying childish hurt he hadn't known existed within him. To protect you, she answered simply. A child of our union represents power beyond measure, potential beyond comprehension. Many would destroy you before allowing that potential to mature. Her form seemed to shimmer, growing less substantial. Our time grows short. Your awakening draws notice from beings beyond mortal comprehension. Wait, Issei reached for her fading figure. I don't understand any of this. What am I supposed to do? What am I becoming? Trust the Grimoire girl, his mother's voice echoed as her form dissolved into starlight. She serves purposes beyond her knowledge, but her heart is true. And remember, shadows can conceal, but they can also reveal truths hidden in the light. Consciousness returned gradually, sensations filtering in one by one. Silk sheets against his skin. The scent of beeswax candles. Distant voices engaged in heated discussion. And pain. Dull, persistent aching in every muscle and joint, as if he'd run a marathon without training. Issei opened his eyes to a bedchamber that could only be described as palatial. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by columns of what appeared to be black marble veined with gold. Crimson draperies framed tall windows that revealed a nightscape unlike anything he'd ever seen, a purple-black sky where two moons hung impossibly close, casting everything in otherworldly light. The underworld, he murmured, memories of Rias's final words returning. Specifically, the Grimoire family estate in the territory of the current Lucifer. A familiar voice clarified. Issei turned to find Akeno sitting in a chair beside his bed, a leather-bound book open in her lap. She'd changed from her battle-damaged Miko attire to a simple black dress that accentuated her figure while remaining modest. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked, voice rasping slightly. "Nearly 2 days," she replied, setting aside her book to pour water from a crystal pitcher. "Here, drink slowly." The water tasted strange, sweeter than he was accustomed to, with mineral undertones he couldn't identify. It eased his parched throat immediately. 2 days, he echoed, processing the information. "My parents, the ones who raised me, they must be worried sick." "Rias arranged for them to believe you're on a school trip," Akino said. "A memory alteration, temporary but effective. When you return, they'll remember you informed them weeks ago." She reclaimed her seat, crossing one leg elegantly over the other. "Though whether you can return remains an open question." Quote, "Because of those attackers. The old Satan faction." "Partly," she acknowledged, "but also because of what's happening to you physically. The awakening process was interrupted, leaving you in a potentially dangerous transitional state. Your body is attempting to adapt to powers it wasn't prepared to handle yet." Issei set the empty glass on a bedside table, noticing for the first time that shadows pooled around his hands like liquid darkness, responding to his movements with slight delay. He jerked back in alarm, and they dissipated. "That's been happening sporadically while you slept," Akino observed. Among other phenomena, the room temperature dropped to near freezing twice. Objects levitated briefly, and for about 20 minutes yesterday. Anyone entering the room experienced their worst fears manifesting as hallucinations. "I'm dangerous," Issei concluded, horrified. "Untrained," she corrected gently. "There's a significant difference. Where's Rias and Kaneko?" "Attending a council meeting regarding your situation. The attack on Kuo Academy didn't go unnoticed by the current leadership of Devil Society." Her expression grew serious. "The emergence of Lucifer's heir creates complications for the existing power structure." The bedroom door opened before Issei could request elaboration. Rias entered, followed by a man who could only be her relative. They shared the same crimson hair and striking features, though his power radiated at an intensity that made Issei instinctively want to kneel. "You're awake," Rias said, relief evident in her voice. "Good. There's much to discuss, and time grows short." She gestured to her companion. "This is my brother, Heir Lucifer, current ruler of the underworld." Heir approached the bed, studying Issei with penetrating blue-green eyes. "Remarkable," he said after a moment. "The resemblance is subtle but undeniable now that the seal has begun to dissolve." "Resemblance to who?" Issei asked, fighting the urge to shrink back from that assessing gaze. "Your father," Heir replied. "The original Lucifer, not the title I now hold." A faint smile touched his lips. "Though I suspect your mother's influence will become more apparent as your divine aspects awaken further." "This is real, then?" Issei glanced between the three devils. "I'm actually the son of biblical figures. Mythological beings." "Biblical and mythological are human categorizations," Heir corrected. "Lucifer was very real, the most beautiful angel in creation before his fall. The first and most powerful of devils after it. And Nyx predates even angels, a primordial force of creation from whom many Greek gods claim descent. If that's true, why wasn't I don't know, born glowing or something? Why did I spend 17 years as a completely normal kid?" Rias settled on the edge of the bed, her proximity sending an inexplicable warmth through Issei despite the serious discussion. "Because your parents went to extraordinary lengths to hide your existence. The seal placed upon you at birth contained your powers completely, altering your very essence to appear human to any magical detection. But it was designed to dissolve gradually beginning on your 17th birthday," Akino added. "Allowing your true nature to emerge slowly, theoretically giving your body time to adapt." "Theoretical being the operative word," Heir noted, "as no being of your particular heritage has ever existed before. The union of a devil king and a primordial Greek deity represents an unprecedented crossing of pantheons." Issei's head swam with the implications. "So what happens now? Can you, I don't know, reseal me? Let me go back to being normal?" The three hanged glances that answered his question before Rias spoke. "I'm afraid that's impossible. Once begun, the awakening cannot be reversed without killing you in the process. And even if it could," she hesitated, "you wouldn't survive anyway," Seirzex finished bluntly. Now that the old Satan faction has identified you, they'll never stop hunting you. Your mere existence threatens their fundamental belief that only pure-blooded descendants of the original Satans have the right to rule the underworld. So I'm stuck here, forever. Panic edged into Issei's voice. Not necessarily forever, Rias said, shooting her brother a reproachful look. But until you can control your abilities and defend yourself, yes, remaining in the underworld is safest. Under the protection of House Grimoire, Seirzex added, his tone making it clear this arrangement had already been decided. Publicly, you'll be introduced as a distant relative of the original Lucifer, discovered recently and brought to the underworld for education in our ways. And privately, Issei asked. Privately, we begin your training immediately, Rias said. I've assembled a team to help you understand and control both as PECTS of your heritage, devilish and divine. My peerage has considerable experience with unusual cases, she continued, noting his confused expression. Akeno is half-fallen angel. Kaneko has her own unique heritage. Kiba, whom you'll meet tomorrow, survived experiments designed to create holy sword wielders. What she's trying to say, Akeno interjected with a faint smile, is that we specialize in helping the unconventional find their place. The sentiment should have been reassuring, but Issei's thoughts had snagged on an earlier detail. Wait, you said I'd be introduced as a distant relative of Lucifer. Not his son. Why the deception? Seirzex and Rias exchanged another meaningful look. Because, Seirzex said carefully, knowledge of your actual parentage would create far more problems than merely political ones. It would potentially incite war between supernatural factions that have maintained uneasy peace for millennia. The Greek pantheon doesn't yet know of your existence, Rias elaborated. Or at least, we don't believe they do. If they were to discover that Nyx, one of their most powerful primordial deities, had a child with Lucifer, Olympus would consider it an act of cosmic treason. Akeno finished. Their pantheon and ours have historical enmities dating back to the formation of the universe itself. Issei slumped back against the pillows, overwhelmed. So I'm basically a walking diplomatic incident. A diplomatic catastrophe, Seirzex corrected, though his tone carried a note of what might have been admiration. With the potential power to reshape the order of multiple supernatural realms, once fully awakened. No pressure, Issei muttered. A knock at the door interrupted further discussion. Kaneko entered, her small form rigid with tension. We have a situation, she announced without preamble. There's an intruder on the estate grounds. A Neko show. Rias frowned. One of the cat spirits. I thought they were nearly extinct after the purge. Nearly. Kaneko agreed, a complex emotion flickering across her usually stoic features. This one is known to me. She's asking for asylum, and for an audience with her gaze shifted to Issei, with the son of Lucifer and Nyx. Seirzex straightened, power briefly flaring around him like crimson lightning. Impossible. Your identity hasn't been revealed to anyone outside this room. Apparently someone knows anyway, Rias said grimly. Description of the intruder, Kaneko. Tall, black hair, 2 black tails, calls herself Kuroka. Kaneko delivered the information flatly. But Issei noticed her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Kuroka. Akeno's eyebrows rose. The SS-class criminal who murdered her master and fled. She has a death sentence on her head in every territory of the underworld. Yes, Kaneko confirmed. And she says she has information about why Issei's parents hid him. Information about a prophecy involving the child of night and darkness. Her golden eyes fixed on Issei. Information she'll only share with him. All eyes turned to Issei, who found himself wishing, not for the first time since waking in this strange world, that he LD returned to being an ordinary high school student whose biggest concern was sneaking peeks in the girls' locker room. I guess, he said with a resigned sigh, I should meet this criminal cat spirit with the death sentence, then. For the first time since he'd met her, Kaneko's expression showed a clear emotion. Unfortunately, that emotion appeared to be pure, unfiltered dread. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Crimson and Shadow. The Grimoire estate gardens stretched before Issei in manicured perfection, illuminated by the twin moons of the underworld. Stone pathways wound through flowering plants he'd never seen on Earth. Blossoms that pulsed with internal light, trees with crystalline leaves that chimed in the gentle breeze. Under different circumstances, he might have found it beautiful. Now, surrounded by devils preparing to confront a dangerous criminal, beauty was the furthest thing from his mind. Rhea stood to his right, crimson hair stirring in the night air, power crackling around her like banked flames. Akeno flanked his left, her usual playful demeanor replaced by focused alertness. Seirzex positioned himself slightly ahead of their group, his casual posture belying the TR. Tremendous power Issei could now somehow sense emanating from him in waves. Only Kaneko remained apart, half hidden in the shadow of a twisted tree whose branches resembled reaching hands. Her small face revealed nothing, but tension radiated from her rigid posture. "You're certain she came alone?" Seirzex asked, addressing a tall man with green hair who had introduced himself as Graphia's replacement for the evening, apparently. The actual head maid had more pressing duties. "Yes, Lord Lucifer," the man confirmed. "Our barriers detected a single intruder who then, deliberately allowed herself to be sensed. She made no attempt to breach the mansion's inner defenses." "A show of good faith," Rhea murmured. "Or a trap. She's waiting in the eastern pavilion," the servant continued. "As instructed, we've established containment wards but made no move to apprehend her." Seirzex nodded approval. "Remain on alert. Kuroka's abilities are not to be underestimated, particularly her mastery of senjutsu." "Senjutsu," Issei whispered to Akeno. "The manipulation of life energy," she explained quietly. "In the hands of a skilled practitioner, it can disrupt the flow of power in others. Create illusions indistinguishable from reality, or enhance physical abilities beyond normal limits." "Sounds dangerous." "Extremely," Akeno agreed, "which is why we're approaching with caution, despite her apparent surrender." They proceeded down a winding path toward a structure visible in the distance, a graceful pavilion of white stone and dark wood that appeared to float above a reflecting pool. As they drew closer, Issei made out a figure lounging on the pavilion's steps, apparently unconcerned by the approaching delegation of powerful devils. The moonlight revealed her clearly as Ey neared, a young woman with a curvaceous figure emphasized by a black kimono that hung provocatively from her shoulders. Long black hair framed golden eyes that gleamed with feline intensity. Most street-ricking were the two black cat ears perched atop her head and twin tails swaying lazily behind her. My, she purred, voice carrying easily across the remaining distance. "Such an honor. The current Lucifer himself, the crimson-haired ruin princess, and the priestess of thunder, all to greet little old me." Her gaze shifted to Issei, sharpening with interest. "And you must be the impossible child. Younger than I expected, Nya. Seirzex halted several yards from the pavilion steps. "Kuroka of the Black Death. You have remarkable courage, approaching my family's estate while carrying a DxD sentence in all territories of the underworld." She stretched languidly, the motion deliberately provocative. "Is it courage when the alternative is certainly worse? I'll take my chances with devil justice over what hunts me now." "And what exactly is hunting you?" Rias asked, voice cool and measured. Kuroka's playful demeanor faltered momentarily. "The same forces that hunted his parents," she answered, nodding toward Issei. "The same ones that will tear apart anyone connected to the prophecy once they realize the child has awakened." "What prophecy?" Issei found himself asking, stepping forward despite Akeno's warning hand on his arm. Kuroka's eyes gleamed. "So they haven't told you. How deliciously typical of devils, keeping secrets even from their own messiah." "I'm no messiah," Issei objected. "Perhaps not yet," she agreed with a mysterious smile. "But prophecies have a way of fulfilling themselves, especially ones written in the blood of primordials." Seirzex power flared visibly, crimson energy crackling around his form. "Speak plainly, Nekosho, or this conversation ends now. What do you know of Issei's parents? Why have you sought him specifically?" Kuroka's gaze never left Issei. "Because his mother saved my life, and in return, I swore an oath to protect her son when the time came." Her playful facade dropped entirely, revealing unexpected gravity. "That time is now. The seal's dissolution has sent ripples through every supernatural realm. The hunters have already begun to gather." "What hunters?" Rias demanded. "Beings with an interest in preventing certain, cosmic rearrangements." Kuroka replied. "Gods who fear displacement. Devils who reject change. Primordials who consider cross-pantheon breeding an abomination. Her eyes narrowed. The OLD Satan faction was merely the first to move. They won't be the last. A tense silence followed her declaration. Issei's mind raced, trying to process implications he barely understood. If Devil's Lick, those who had attacked him at school represented only the beginning of his troubles. You claim to have sworn an oath to Nyx, Searsx said finally, breaking the silence. Prove it. Kuroka rose in a fluid motion, her kimono falling open slightly to reveal a complex sigil etched into the skin above her heart. It pulsed with dark energy, stars seeming to move within its intricate patterns. The mark of Nyx, she said simply. Given to those who enter her service voluntarily. It cannot be falsified or transferred. Searsx studied the mark intently, then gave a slight nod. It appears genuine. How reassuring that I have your approval, Lord Lucifer, Kuroka said, sarcasm edging her voice. She refocused on Issei, her expression softening slightly. You look overwhelmed, kitten. Nding out, you're the child of cosmic forces can be rather disorienting, I imagine. That's putting it mildly, Issei admitted. What is this prophecy you mentioned? Rias pressed, steering the conversation back to its purpose. Kuroka sighed, retaking her seat on the pavilion steps. Always so direct, you Grimoire types. Very well. She straightened, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality. When night embraces fallen light, a child of shadow and flame ignites. Asterisk. Neither angel, devil, nor divine. But something new across the line. Asterisk. The veil between realms grown thin. Will tear apart or mend within. Asterisk. Balance sundered, order reforged. Through blood of mixed divinity purged. She paused, golden eyes reflecting the moonlight. There's more, but that's the relevant portion. It appeared simultaneously in 3 locations 17 years ago, carved into the world tree Yggdrasil, etched in light on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and burned into the stone of Zeus's throne on Olympus. That's impossible, Akino said. Such manifestations across pantheons would require power beyond any single deity, Kuroka finished for her. Precisely. Which is why every supernatural faction took notice. Some interpreted it as prophecy of doom, a half-breed abomination who would destroy established order. Others saw the potential for positive transformation, a bridge between realms long separated. Her gaze returned to Issei. Your mother belonged to the latter group. Your father, she shrugged expressively. Who can say what Lucifer truly believed? His motivations were ever his own. The casual way she referenced his biological parents sent an odd pang through Issei's chest. These mythic figures discussed as real people who had made choices that directly impacted his existence. If this prophecy appeared 17 years ago, he said slowly, then it happened when I was born. Or perhaps you were born because it appeared, Kuroka suggested. Causalate. Why gets rather flexible when primordial forces are involved. From the shadows of the twisted tree, Kaneko finally spoke. Why did you kill your master, Ne-sama? The question hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Kuroka's expression shifted, something complicated and pained crossing her features before settling into careful neutrality. For the same reason I'm here now, she answered. To protect what matters. He learned of my connection to the prophecy, of the oath I swore to Nyx. He intended to use that connection to capture her child, you, Issei Hyodo, and deliver you to those who would SSECT your power like a laboratory specimen. Her gaze shifted to Kaneko, softening visibly. I never abandoned you by choice, Sharon. I've been running ever since, staying one step ahead of hunters from multiple factions. Working to fulfill my oath. Convenient explanation, Kaneko said flatly, though Issei detected a slight waver in her voice. Searsx cleared his throat. While family reunions are touching, we have more pressing concerns. He fixed Kuroka with a penetrating stare. You've delivered your warning and explained your presence. What exactly do you want from us? Sanctuary, Kuroka replied immediately. Protection from those who would execute me for doing exactly what you're attempting now, keeping the child of Lucifer and Nyx safe until his power matures. And in exchange, Rias asked, I offer my knowledge of the prophecy, my skills in senjutsu which could help stabilize his awakening, and, she smiled, revealing delicate fangs, my undying loyalty to the son of my patroness. Your loyalty belongs to my sister, Kaneko interjected sharply. Kuroka's expression faltered. Sharon, I don't want to hear it. Kaneko cut her off, turning away. I don't care what reasons you had. You left me alone. The naked hurt in the usually stoic girl's voice created an uncomfortable silence. Kuroka's ears flattened against her head, genuine regret evident in her posture. Sears broke the tension with a decisive gesture. We'll discuss your request for sanctuary. For now, you'll remain under supervision within the estate grounds. He turned to Rias. I leave this matter in your hands. The political implications of harboring Kuroka are significant. Consider carefully before making any commitments. I understand, Oni-sama, Rias replied with formal deference. Good. His gaze shifted to Issei. You and I will speak privately tomorrow. There are matters concerning your father's legacy that require attention. Without waiting for a response, he turned and departed. Several servants materializing to accompany him. Rias sighed once her brother was out of earshot. Akino, please escort our guest to the East Wing guest chambers. Full security protocols, but with appropriate comforts. Of course, Bushu. Akino's expression revealed nothing of her thoughts as she approached Kuroka. This way, please. Kuroka rose gracefully, pausing as she passed Issei. We'll talk more soon, little heir. There's much your mother would want you to know. Her gaze lingered on Kaneko's retreating form. And much I need to make right. As Akino led Kuroka away, Issei found himself alone with Rias in the moonlit garden. The events of the evening had left his mind spinning with questions, each answer only generating more uncertainty. Are you all right? Rias asked, genuine concern in her voice. I don't know, he admitted. 2 days ago I was worried about math homework. Now I'm the subject of some cosmic prophecy with multiple supernatural factions either wanting to protect me or dissect me. A soft laugh escaped her. When you put it that way, it does sound rather overwhelming. Just a bit, he agreed with a weak smile. Does life in the supernatural world always move this quickly? Not always, she said, beginning to walk along one of the garden paths. Issei fell into step beside her, finding strange comfort in her presence despite the absurdity of his situation. But when it does, adaptation becomes essential. You're handling it remarkably well, all things considered. Am I? Because I feel like I'm about 10 seconds from a complete breakdown at any given moment. Rias stopped, turning to face him directly. In the moonlight, her crimson hair took on an almost ethereal quality, framing features that managed to be both beautiful and kind despite the power he now knew she possessed. Fear is natural, she said quietly. Even expected. What matters is that you haven't let it paralyze you. You've faced each revelation with questions rather than denial. With thoughtfulness rather than panic. She smiled. Those are the responses of someone with inner strength, Issei. Don't underestimate yourself. Her words carried unexpected weight, easing something tight in his chest. Thank you, he said simply. They resumed walking, comfortable silence stretching between them until they reached a small clearing centered around a fountain. The water within glowed with a soft blue light, casting rippling patterns across the surrounding stone. I have 1,000 questions, Issei said finally. But I don't even know where to start. Then perhaps I should start instead, Rias suggested, seating herself on the fountain's edge. What would you like to know about first? Devil Society, your father's position within it. The implications of your Greek heritage. Issei settled beside her, careful to maintain respectful distance. Honestly, I'd like to know more about you. Surprise flashed across her features before she composed herself. Me, I'm hardly the most interesting aspect of your new reality. Maybe not, he agreed. But you've become my guide to all this. He gestured vaguely at their surroundings. The underworld, devils, my apparent destiny, it's all abstract. You're concrete, real, and I know almost nothing about the person who's decided to take responsibility for me. A faint blush colored her cheeks. That's unexpectedly thoughtful, she considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, what would you like to know? Everything, he said honestly. But let's start with why. Why did you decide to watch over me? Your brother mentioned orders, but you could have assigned anyone to that task. Rias leaned back slightly, regarding the twin moons overhead. Initially, it was indeed at my brother's request. As the devil overseeing Kuo Town, I was the logical choice to monitor a potentially powerful entity in my territory. Her expression grew thoughtful, But I became personally invested the more I observed you. Me. But I was completely ordinary. Embarrassingly so. A smile tugged at her lips. You weren't as ordinary as you believe. Even with your powers sealed, there was something different about how you interacted with the world. You showed kindness to those society deemed unworthy of it, like helping that lost child find her mother when everyone else ignored her tears. Or defending that stray dog from those cruel boys. Issei blinked in surprise. You saw all that. I had you under surveillance for months, she reminded him, a hint of amusement in her voice. But yes, I saw those moments. Small acts that revealed character. She turned to face him directly. Devils aren't the evil beings human mythology portrays, but we do tend to value power and ambition above compassion. Seeing someone who might possess tremendous power but retain such simple kindness, it intrigued me. The admission warmed something inside him. I'm not sure I deserve that assessment, but thank you. You'll have plenty of opportunities to prove me right or wrong in the coming days, she said, rising from the fountain's edge. Starting tomorrow, your training begins in earnest. I suggest you get what rest you can. As they walked back toward the mansion, Issei gathered his courage to ask another question that had been bothering him. Rias. About Kaneko and Kuroka. What's their story? Rias's expression grew somber. That's not mine to share fully. What I can tell you is that they're sisters, the last surviving Nekosho, a rare subspecies of Nekomata with extraordinary powers. Kuroka's actions left Kaneko alone and vulnerable at a very young age. If not for my brother's intervention, she likely would have been executed alongside her sister simply for sharing her blood. That's horrible. The supernatural world can be cruel, Rias acknowledged. Powerful beings often fear what they don't understand, and fear leads to terrible decisions. She glanced at him meaningfully. Remember that as you come into your power, Issei. Fear is the true enemy, not any particular faction or individual. The weight of her words followed him back to his chambers, Wher. Exhaustion finally overcame the day's tumultuous emotions. As sleep claimed him, he found himself once again in that familiar starscape, waiting for the mother he'd never known to appear. Your awakening accelerates, Nyx observed, her form more substantial than in previous dreams. Though her face remained partially obscured by shadows, Issei could now make out striking features, high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that contained swirling galaxies where whites and irises should be. Events move more quickly than anticipated. You mean Kuroka finding me? Issei asked. She says she serves you. The Nekosho has honored her oath, his mother confirmed. Though her methods sometimes lack subtlety. Amusement colored her tone. She was not my first choice of guardian, but circumstances limited my options when concealing you. Why did you hide me? Why not raise me yourself? Sadness rippled through the starscape surrounding them, distant constellations dimming momentarily. The birth of a child between primordial deities of different pantheons has occurred only once before in cosmic history. The resulting being became so powerful that multiple pantheons united to imprison it within the fabric of reality itself. When I realized I carried Lucifer's child, I knew similar forces would align against you unless I took drastic measures. So you gave me away. Made me human. Not human, she corrected gently. Disguised. The seal we placed upon you suppressed your true nature, but could never eliminate it entirely. It merely bought you time to grow, to form you. Our own identity before the weight of your heritage could crush you beneath expectations and fear. The explanation made a certain kind of sense, though it did little to ease the complex emotions roiling within him. Did you ever check on me? Watch over me, when possible, Nyx replied, her voice softening. Night belongs to me in all realms. Sometimes, when you slept beneath particularly clear skies, I could reach through the stars to brush against your dreams. But active intervention would have revealed your location to those with the power to sense such connections. Issei absorbed this, trying to reconcile the cosmic being before him with the concept of motherhood. And my father, was he part of this decision? Something complex passed through the starscape, ripples of emo. Tian too alien for Issei to fully comprehend. Lucifer agreed to the necessity, though it pained him greatly. He was not designed for absence. Angels, even fallen ones, are creatures of presence. To love something is to be near it. In their understanding, Is he still alive? The question emerged barely above a whisper. The stars around them pulsed, a cosmic heartbeat of uncertainty. Lucifer's fate remains one of the great mysteries of the supernatural world. He vanished shortly after we concealed you, leaving no trace even I could follow. Her form drew closer, cool fingers brushing his cheek. But he left provisions for you, knowledge, power, artifacts secured against your eventual awakening. Cyrzek's Lucifer knows of some of these legacies. That's why he wants to speak with me tomorrow, Issei realized. Yes. Nyx's form began to fade, the edges of her becoming indistinct as stars shone through her outline. Our time grows short, my son. Remember, trust the Grimoire girl, be you. Verify what others tell you about your heritage. Many will seek to shape your understanding to serve their purposes. Wait, Issei called as she dissolved into starlight. How do I control these powers? I don't know what I'm doing. Her voice echoed as the dream began to dissolve. Shadow and flame are opposing forces that require balance. Look to your guardians, each represents an aspect of your heritage. The devil teaches control, the cat teaches perception, the priestess teaches duality, the knight teaches purpose, and the small one teaches resilience. Learn from them all. Morn. In the underworld arrived with disorienting familiarity. Sunlight streaming through windows, birds singing outside, the distant sounds of activity. Only the purple tinge to the sky and the occasion. Owl-winged silhouette passing overhead reminded Issei that he was no longer in the human world. A soft knock preceded Akino's entrance, carrying a tray laden with breakfast. She'd exchanged yesterday's black dress for what appeared to be a modified Kuo Academy uniform. Good morning, she greeted cheerfully. Did you sleep well? I had dreams again, Issei admitted, accepting the tray with gratitude. The food looked normal enough. Toast, eggs, fruit, though the colors were slightly off, the fruit varieties unfamiliar. Your mother? Akino asked, taking a seat in the chair beside his bed. Issei nodded, sampling what appeared to be a purple strawberry. It tasted like nothing he'd experienced before, sweet but with complex undertones of spice and something almost floral. She confirmed Kuroka's story. Apparently, she assigned her as some kind of guardian. Interesting. Akino tilted her head thoughtfully. Kuroka's reputation makes her an unusual choice for such a role. What exactly did she do? I know she killed her master, but it wasn't just that she killed him, Akino explained. It was how, according to reports, she massacred an entire household of devils, including other servants. In a display of power that bordered on berserker rage. Senjutsu at its darkest. Issei frowned, recalling Kuroka's explanation from the previous night. She claimed she did it to protect her sister, and me, apparently. Perhaps, Akino acknowledged. Many truths in our world have multiple facets. I simply advise caution in accepting her version without verification. Nyx said so. Nothing similar about trusting but verifying, Issei noted, continuing his breakfast. She also mentioned all of you, said you each represent aspects of my heritage I need to learn from. Interest sparked in Akino's violet eyes. Did she elaborate? Somewhat cryptically. She called you, the priestess who teaches duality. A complex emotion flitted across Akino's features. Appropriate, I suppose, she murmured. Given my mixed heritage. Before Issei could inquire further, another knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal a handsome blonde young man with a gentle smile that somehow failed to reach his eyes. Pardon the intrusion, he said, bowing slightly. I'm Yuto Kiba, Knight of Rias Grimoire's peerage. I've been asked to escort you to Lord Cyrzek's when you're ready. Akino rose gracefully. I'll leave you to prepare, then. Your clothing has been arranged in the wardrobe, something appropriate for a formal meeting. She paused at the door. Remember, Issei-kun, in the underworld. Appearances carry tremendous significance. First impressions often determine how others will interact with you going forward. After she departed, Kiba remained by the door, his posture relaxed but alert. Take your time, he said. Lord Cyrzek understands you're still adjusting. Issei finished his breakfast and approached the massive wardrobe dominating one wall of the bedroom. Inside hung an assortment of clothing ranging from casual to formal, all apparently tailored to his measurements. He selected what seemed appropriately formal without being ostentatious: black trousers, a deep blue shirt. And a jacket with subtle silver embroidery along the lapels. Good choice, Kiba approved as Issei emerged from the adjacent bathroom fully dressed. Conservative but quality. It suggests respect without desperation to impress. You sound like you've had experience with court politics, Issei observed. A shadow passed briefly across Kiba's features. I've observed more than participated. As Ryas-sama's knight, I attend many formal functions but rarely speak. He offered a smile that seemed more genuine than his initial one. I understand you're experiencing a rather abrupt introduction to supernatural society. If you have questions during our walk, I'm happy to answer what I can. The offer seemed sincere, and Issei found himself warming to the blonde devil as they navigated the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. Actually, I do have one question. Nyx, my mother, mentioned you in my dream last night. She called you the knight who teaches purpose. Surprise registered briefly in Kiba's expression. I'm honored to be mentioned by a primordial deity, though I'm not certain I deserve such distinction. His pace slowed slightly as they descended a grand staircase. If I were to guess her meaning, perhaps it relates to my reason for becoming a devil. Which was revenge, Kiba answered, voice cooling several degrees. I was the sole survivor of an experiment conducted by a faction of the church, the Holy Sword Project. They killed my friends when the project failed, and I lived only to make them pay. His expression softened fractionally. Ryas-sama gave me purpose beyond revenge. Though the desire still burns. I'm sorry, Issei said, unsure how else to respond to such a revelation. Kiba shook his head. Don't be. We all carry burdens from our pasts. I suspect you'll soon discover yours, though they've been hidden until now. They continued in thoughtful silence until reaching an imposing set of doors carved with scenes of what appeared to be ancient battles. Two guards stood at attention, nodding respectfully as Kiba approached. Lord Searsex awaits within, one announced, opening the doors to reveal a vast library unlike anything Issei had ever seen. Bookshelves soared 3 stories high, accessible by rolling ladders and floating platforms. Ancient tomes and scrolls occupied glass cases between the shelves, some glowing with faint magical energy. At the center of this literary fortress sat Searsex behind a massive desk of polished obsidian, various documents spread before him. Ah, Issei-kun, he greeted, rising smoothly. Thank you for escorting him. Kiba-kun. That will be all. Kiba bowed and departed, closing the doors behind him. Searsex gestured to a chair across from his desk. I trust you slept well. The first few nights in the underworld can be disorienting for those unaccustomed to our ambient magic. I had dreams, Issei replied, taking the offered seat. My mother spoke to me again. Nyx, Searsex nodded. The goddess of primordial night. Such communication through dreams aligns with her domain. He studied Issei with analytical interest. Did she offer guidance regarding your current situation? Some. She confirmed Kuroka's story and mentioned that you know about things my father left for me. A smile flickered across Searsex's face. Direct, aren't you? Very well. He rose, moving to one of the glass cases positioned prominently near his desk. What do you know about the original Lucifer, Issei-kun? Almost nothing, Issei admitted. Just what human mythology says. He was an angel who rebelled and fell. A grotesque simplification, Searsex said, his voice carrying no judgment for Issei's ignorance. Lucifer was the morning star, first and most beautiful of the angels created by the biblical God. His fall wasn't merely rebellion, it was philosophical divergence. He believed that creatures of free will should exercise that will freely, without predetermined paths or arbitrary restrictions. He unlocked the case with a key that materialized from thin air, retrieving an ancient leather-bound book. This is the Codex Luciferus, one of the few texts written in Lucifer's own hand. It details his thoughts before, during, and after the great war between angels, fallen angels, and devils. Searsex placed the book carefully on the desk before Issei. Few have been permitted to read its contents. Even I have accessed only specific passages relevant to my position as current Satan Lucifer. Issei stared at the book, an inexplicable sense of connection thrumming through him. Why show me this now? Because of this, Searsex replied, opening the codex to a marked page near the end. The text appeared written in a language Issei had never seen, complex Simbo. LS that should have been incomprehensible. Yet as he stared at them, understanding bloomed in his mind as if he'd known this script his entire life. Should my union with the Night Mother bear fruit, Issei read aloud. Surprising himself, I leave this testament to my heir. The power of a morning star contains both illumination and shadow, the capacity to reveal truth and to burn with righteous fire. This duality must be mastered lest it master you. The path of balance walks between tyranny and chaos, between absolute order and complete freedom. Find this path, my child, for upon it lies the future of all realms. Sears watched him intently. You can read celestial script, he observed. Interesting. I don't understand how, Issei admitted, tracing the symbols with a finger. The words just formed in my mind. Blood recognizes blood, Sears said simply. The language of angels, even fallen ones, carries through their lineage. He closed the book carefully. There's more, of course. Lucifer left various legacies scattered throughout the supernatural world, artifacts, properties, knowledge caches. Some I know of, others remain hidden, protected by safeguards that would likely respond to you alone. Why are you sharing this with me? Issei asked directly. Doesn't my existence potentially threaten your position? If I'm Lucifer's actual son? Sears laughed, the sound genuinely amused. My title is Lucifer, as honorary, Issei-kun. The 4 original Satans died in the Great War, or at least, were believed to have died. Their descendants formed what we now call the Old Satan faction, believing rulership should follow bloodlines. The current system arose in opposition to that view, with the 4 new Satans chosen based on merit and ability rather than heritage. His expression grew more serious. I have no desire to cling to power for its own sake. If you prove worthy of leadership once your abilities mature, I would gladly step aside. However, he added with pointed emphasis, that maturity lies years in your future, and assumes you survive long enough to achieve it. The hunters Kuroka mentioned. Indeed. Sears returned to his seat, steepling his fingers. Which brings us to the immediate question of your education and protection. My sister has volunteered her peerage to oversee both, an arrangement I find sensible given their IQ experiences with those of mixed heritage. You mean Akino and Kaneko? Among others. Sears nodded. Rias has a talent for gathering exceptional individuals and helping them reach their potential. Additionally, her status as my sister provides political coverage for harboring you, and potentially Kuroka, should you decide to accept the Nekoshu's offer of service. Issei frowned. Shouldn't that be Rias's decision? She's the one taking the political risk. Approval flickered in Sears' eyes. Thoughtful of you to consider that. But no, while Rias provides the formal protection, Yuroka has pledged herself specifically to you. In Devil Society, such pledges of personal service create magical contracts that bind both parties. The decision must be yours. The responsibility felt weighty, particularly given Kaneko's obvious distress regarding her sister. I need time to consider it, Issei said finally. And to speak with Kaneko. I won't accept Kuroka's service if it causes further pain to someone who's already suffered because of her actions. A compassionate perspective, Sears observed, his tone neutral but expression approving. Take the time you need. For now, here are more pressing matters requiring attention, namely, stabilizing your awakening powers before they cause damage to yourself or others. He rose again, moving to a different section of the library. I've arranged for you to begin training this afternoon with Rias and her peerage. Before that, however, there's something you should see. Sears led him to a full-length mirror mounted on one wall. At first glance, it appeared to be an ordinary, if ornate, looking glass. Then Sears spoke a word that resonated at frequencies beyond normal hearing, and the mirror's surface rippled like disturbed water. Look, he instructed simply. Issei stepped before the mirror, expecting to see his normal reflection. Instead, the image showed a version of himself that was simultaneously familiar and alien. His basic features remained. But subtle differences accumulated to create an almost otherworldly effect. His eyes contained flecks of silver light, like distant stars. His skin held a faint luminescence. Most startling was the shadow behind him, which formed the suggestion of massive wings stretching from his shoulder blades. What am I seeing? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Your true form, Sears replied. Or rather, glimpses of what it will become as the seal continues to dissolve. This mirror reveals essence rather than appearance, it shows what lies beneath physical reality. Issei stared, transfixed by this vision of himself. I look like your father, Cyrzx finished quietly. Though your eyes are entirely your mother's. Lucifer's were gold, molten and fierce. Yours contain the night sky itself. The observation sent a strange tremor through Issei, the first tangible connection to his biological parents beyond dreams and second-hand accounts. The transformation will continue gradually. Cyrzx continued, waving a hand to restore the mirror to its normal state. Physical changes, power manifestations, altered perceptions. Some will be disorienting, others potentially dangerous without proper training. Which begins this afternoon, Issei concluded. Indeed, Cyrzx guided him back toward the desk. In the meantime, I encourage you to spend some time with this. He indicated the codex. Reading your father's thoughts may provide insights into aspects of your nature that devils like myself can only theorize about. A clock somewhere in the library chimed the hour. And Cyrzx glanced up. Ah, duty calls. Feel free to remain here as long as you wish. The guards outside will direct you to the training grounds when you're ready to join Rias. He paused at the door. One final thought, Issei-kun. Power, whether devilish or divine, responds to will and identity. Knowing who you are beyond your parentage will prove crucial in the days ahead. With that philosophical note, he departed, leaving Issei alone with the written legacy of a father he'd never known. The codex proved fascinating and frustrating in equal measure. While Issei could read the celestial script without difficulty, understanding the context of Lucifer's thoughts required cultural and historical knowledge he simply didn't possess. References to events, beings, and concepts completely foreign to him peppered the text, creating gaps in comprehension that left him with more questions than answers. Still, certain passages resonated with uncanny relevance. Power without purpose becomes tyranny. Purpose without power becomes martyrdom. The balance between lies not in compromise but in clarity, knowing precisely what must be preserved and what must be changed. And later, the Night Mother understands what my brothers among the heavenly host cannot, that darkness is not evil but necessary. Without shadow, light blinds rather than illuminates. Without contrast, truth becomes indistinguishable from illusion. Issei lost track of time, absorbed in these philosophical musings from a being described variously as history's greatest rebel, most beautiful angel, and progenitor of devil kind. Only when the library doors opened to admit Rias did he realize hours had passed. I see my brother shared the codex, she observed, approaching T. He desk where Issei sat surrounded by notes he'd taken on pieces of parchment provided alongside the book. It's fascinating, Issei admitted, though I feel like I'm missing most of the context. Few could claim otherwise, Rias assured him, glancing at his notes with interest. Lucifer's perspective spanned creation itself. Even the oldest living devils understand only fragments of his experience. She smiled. But you've already grasped more than most, judging by your annotations. Issei followed her gaze to where he'd underlined a passage about duality and balance, adding his own observations about how it might relate to controlling shadow and flame, the elements Nyx had mentioned in his dream. Just trying to make sense of it all, he said, slightly embarrassed by her praise. Did you come to collect me for training? Yes, though there's no rush. The others are preparing the grounds. She settled into the chair Cyrzx had occupied earlier. How are you feeling after your conversation with my brother? Overwhelmed, Issei admitted honestly. But also, I don't know, more grounded, somehow. Seeing something actually written by Lucifer, by my father, makes this whole situation feel more real. Rias nodded understanding. That's natural. We all seek connection to our origins, even when those origins are complicated. She leaned forward slightly. May I ask what you've discovered about yourself through his writings? The question felt significant, as if she were testing him somehow. Issei considered carefully before answering. That balance seems to be the core principle of his philosophy. Despite his reputation as a rebel, not balance as compromise or moderation, but as purposeful integration of opposites. He tapped one of the passages he'd marked. He writes about light and shadow as necessary complements, not opposing forces. About how rebellion against tyranny isn't chaos but a different kind of order. Approval warmed Rias's expression. An insightful reading. Most interpret Lucifer's rebellion as simple defiance or pride, missing the nuance of his actual position. What do you think? Issei asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. About Lucifer. She considered the question thoughtfully. I think he saw further than those around him, recognized contradictions in the system that others accepted without question. Whether his solution was correct remains debatable, but his diagnosis of the problem was accurate. The problem being predetermined purpose without genuine choice, Rias replied. Being created for specify, see functions and denied the freedom to choose alternatives. A wry smile touched her lips. Devils value freedom above almost everything else. Perhaps that's Lucifer's most enduring legacy to our kind. The observation resonated with passages Issei had just read. Before he could respond, however, the library doors opened again to admit Akino. Forgive the interruption, she said, bowing slightly. But we have a situation developing in the training grounds. Rias straightened immediately. What's happened? Kuroka decided to join us, Akino explained, a note of tension in her voice. Kaneko objected, forcefully. I see. Rias stood, straightening her uniform skirt with an automatic gesture. It seems our training session may begin with conflict resolution rather than power manifestation. She glanced at Issei. Are you ready to observe devil politics in action? As ready as I'll ever be, he replied, carefully closing the codex before rising to join her. The journey to the training grounds took them through the estate gardens again, though a different section than the previous night's meeting with Kuroka. Here, the manicured lawns gave way to more practical spaces, open fields, obstacle courses, and what appeared to be a combat arena constructed of stone and reinforced with magical barriers. Within this arena, the situation became immediately apparent. Kaneko stood at one end, her small form radiating barely controlled fury. White cat ears had emerged from her hair, along with a tail lashing angrily behind her. At the opposite end, Kuroka lounged against a pillar with deceptive casualness. Though her alert eyes and tense posture suggested readiness for combat, Hiba stood between them, hands raised in a placating gesture that seemed to be having minimal effect. Iceable magical barriers separated both Nekosho from each other, shimmering with strain. Enough, Rias declared as they entered, her voice carrying authority that immediately captured everyone's attention. This is neither the time nor the place for personal grievances. With respect, Bushu, Kaneko replied, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. She has no right to be here. No right to sue. Denly reappear in my life after abandoning me. I never abandoned you, Sharon, Kuroka said, pain evident beneath her usual playful tone. I did what was necessary to protect you. By becoming a murderer. Kaneko's golden eyes flashed dangerously. By forcing me to live with the shame of your actions. To be seen as a potential threat because of our shared blood. The raw hurt in the normal. Why stoic girl's voice created an uncomfortable silence. Issei felt a surge of protectiveness toward Kaneko, whose small form seemed to contain an ocean of repressed pain. Perhaps, he suggested quietly to Rias. They need to discuss this privately before any training can happen. She glanced at him with mild surprise. You would postpone your own training to address their conflict. My trainin' won't be effective if the group is divided, Issei pointed out. Besides, Nyx mentioned that Kaneko, the small one, would teach me resilience. How can she do that if she's consumed by her own pain? Something like respect flickered in Rias's eyes. A valid perspective. What do you propose? The question caught him off guard. He hadn't expected his opinion to carry weight in devil matters. I think they need controlled confrontation. Not physical fighting, but a chance to actually communicate with supervision to prevent escalation. Rias considered this, then nodded decisively. Very well. She approached the center of the arena, power subtly gathering around her. New plan. Before Issei's training begins, we will address the situation between Kaneko and Kuroka. Not through combat, but through moderated dialogue. I have nothing to say to her, Kaneko objected. Clearly untrue, Rias replied firmly but kindly. You have years of unspoken words building inside you, Kaneko. Is division weakens us at a time when we cannot afford weakness. Kuroka pushed away from her pillar, approaching the barrier separating her from the others. I'm willing to explain everything, Sharon. You deserve that much, at least. Kaniko's expression remained mutinous, but she didn't object further as Rias guided everyone to a section of the training grounds set up with seating around a central fire pit. Akeno, Kiba, please prepare the training equipment while we address this matter, Rias instructed. Issei, you'll join us as an observer, since both parties are connected to your situation. Once seated, an uncomfortable silence descended. Kaniko stared resolutely at the unlit fire pit while Kuroka fidgeted with one of her long sleeves. Rias waited patiently, apparently content to let the silence build until someone broke it naturally. Finally, Kuroka sighed dramatically. This is ridiculous. Sharon, look at me. Don't call me that, Kaniko said flatly. My name is Kaniko now. Fine, Kaniko. Kuroka conceded, a flash of hurt crossing her features. But at least look at me while you hate me. Golden eyes reluctantly rose to meet their match. The resemblance Betway and the sisters became more apparent when their faces were aligned. The same delicate bone structure, the same determined set to their jaws, though Kuroka's features had matured into sensual beauty while Kaniko's retained childlike roundness. I didn't kill our master because I went power mad from Senjutsu, as the official story claims, Kuroka began without preamble. I killed him because I discovered he was selling information about you to the Chaos Brigade. The unfamiliar term meant nothing to Issei, but Rias stiffened beside him, and Kaniko's eyes widened fractionally. You're lying, Kaniko said. But uncertainty had crept into her voice. Why would I? Kuroka countered. The official story made me an irredeemable villain. The truth merely makes me a murderer with justification. Her ears flattened slightly. He learned about our connection to Nyx, about the oath I swore to protect her child. He planned to use that connection to gain favor with factions hunting for Issei. And that required killing the entire household. Kaniko challenged. Kuroka's expression darkened. The entire household consisted of conspirators who had already agreed to the arrangement. They planned to use you as bait, a younger, more controllable Nekosho with the same connection to Nyx through me. Her voice hardened. They would have tortured you to draw her attention, Sharon. I couldn't allow that. The blunt statement hung in the air between them. Issei watched Kaniko's face carefully, seeing doubt war with long-held anger. Why didn't you take me with you? She asked finally, her voice small and young. The question seemed to pierce Kuroka more effectively than any accusation. Her confident facade crumbled momentarily, revealing genuine anguish. Because I couldn't protect you as a fugitive, she answered. Voice catching. I had multiple supernatural factions hunting me. Devils for the murders, the Chaos Brigade for interfering with their plans, various pantheons for my connection to Nyx. You were safer separated from me, even if that meant. She swallowed hard. Even if that meant you would hate me for abandoning you. You could have explained, Kaniko insisted, though with less heat than before. Left a message, something, and risk it being intercepted. Revealing your importance. Kuroka shook her head. I made a choice between your safety and your understanding. I chose safety. Her gaze shifted briefly to include Issei. Just as Nyx chose for her son. The parallel struck Issei forcefully. Both he and Kaniko had been separated from family for their protection. Left to construct identities without knowledge of their true heritage. I can't forgive you yet, Kaniko said after a long silence. But I want to know more. About what really happened. About our family before everything went wrong. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Relief visibly washed over Kuroka, her tense posture relaxing slightly. Thank you. Kaniko, she corrected herself. I'll tell you everything, I promise. Rias nodded approval. A good start. We'll arrange time for those discussions later. For now, she turned to Issei. We should begin your training while daylight remains. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of activity as Rias's peerage took turns working with different aspects of Issei's awakening abilities. Kiba focused on physical training, pushing Issei's enhanced reflexes and strength through combat drills that left him bruised but exhilarated. Akeno guided him through basic magical theory, explaining how his unique Harry Tage might manifest in ways different from standard devil abilities. Most devils have an elemental affinity, she explained as they sat cross-legged on a training mat. Power of destruction for the Bale and Ramori lines, ice for the Citri family, and so on. Your paternal lineage might express as hellfire, Lucifer's signature element, while your maternal divine aspect likely connects to shadows and night. How do I access either one? Issei asked, frustrated after several failed attempts to manifest anything beyond fleeting shadow movements. Intent and imagery, Akeno replied patiently. Evils channel power through desire and will. Gods typically use conceptual connections, embodying aspects of their domains. She considered him thoughtfully. Try this. Close your eyes and imagine Stan. Ding at the boundary between night and day. Before you lies darkness, behind you flames. Both are yours to command, neither controls you. Issei followed her instruction, constructing the mental image with as much detail as possible. In his mind's eye, he stood on a threshold between two realms. Behind him, a landscape of flickering crimson and gold fire that radiated not just heat but purpose. Before him, an expanse of star-filled darkness that promised not oblivion but potential. Both are mine, he murmured, extending his hands in either direction within the visualization. Neither controls me. Something shifted within him, a sensation like internal barriers dissolving. Heat flowed down his right arm while cool shadow embraced his left. He opened his eyes to find his right hand wreathed in crimson flames that didn't burn his skin, while his left had become partially translucent, darkness swirling within and around it like living smoke. Excellent, Akeno breathed, violet eyes wide with fascination. Now, balance them. Don't let either element dominate. The instruction proved more challenging than it sounded. The fire wanted to consume, to spread and transform, the shadow sought to envelop. To conceal and preserve, bringing them into equilibrium required constant attention, like balancing on a tightrope while juggling. It's difficult, Issei admitted through gritted teeth, as the flames began overtaking his forearm. Of course it is, Akeno agreed without sympathy. You're channeling opposing primal forces. But that opposition is precisely what will make you powerful once mastered. Neither light nor darkness alone offers complete understanding, only their integration reveals the full spectrum of reality. The philosophical observation resonated with passages from Lucifer's Codex, helping Issei refocus his concentration. Gradually, the flames receded to match the shadow's extent, creating a visually striking symmetry as he held his arms before him. Well done, Rias commented, approaching from where she'd been observing nearby. For a first attempt, that's remarkably controlled. Pride at her approval warmed Issei more than the hellfire dancing around his hand. It still feels unstable, he admitted, like I'm barely containing opposing forces rather than truly unifying them. Integration takes time, she assured him. You're attempting in DxD. Had most supernatural beings spend centuries perfecting. The reminder of his accelerated timeline sobered Issei's momentary elation. As concentration broke, both manifestations faded, leaving him suddenly exhausted. That's enough for today, Rias decided, noting his fatigue. Pushing too far too quickly risks backlash. As they gathered their equipment, a servant approached with a formal bow. Pardon the interruption, Lady Grimori, but Lord Lucifer requests your presence in the main hall. An unexpected visitor has arrived claiming knowledge relevant to your guest. Rias frowned slightly. Did they provide a name? Yes, my lady. She identified herself as Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon. The name meant nothing to Issei, but its effect on the devils was immediate and dramatic. No nearly dropped the training materials she'd been collecting, while Kiba's hand instinctively moved toward the sword at his hip. Tiamat, Rias repeated, shock evident in her voice. The Dragon King. Yes, my lady. Lord Lucifer is currently entertaining her, but requested your presence urgently. Rias composed herself with visible effort. We'll come immediately. Akeno, Kaneko, Kiba, full formal protocol. Issei. She turned to him with an expression caught between concern and calculation. Stay close to me and speak only when directly addressed. Who is Tiamat? Issei asked as they hurried back toward the mansion. His fatigue forgotten in the face of their obvious alarm. The most powerful female dragon in existence, Akeno explained, matching their brisk pace. Ancient beyond reckoning and notoriously unpredictable. She rarely involves herself in the affairs of other supernatural factions. And she's never, to my knowledge, voluntarily entered devil territory, Rias added. Something momentous must have prompted this visit. Something like me, Issei guessed, apprehension building in his chest. Rias didn't contradict him, which he found more worrying than any confirmation. They reached the mansion's grand entrance hall to find an atmosphere of controlled tension. Guards positioned discreetly along the walls stood at higher alertness than Issei had previously observed. Cyrzx occupied a throne-like chair on a slightly raised dais, his casual demeanor from their earlier meeting replaced by formal authority. Before him stood one of the most beautiful and terrifying women Issei had ever seen. Tall and regal, with sapphire blue hair cascading to her waist, she exuded power that made even Cyrzx seem restrained by comparison. Her eyes, vertical pupilled, the same striking blue as her hair, shifted to Issei the moment he entered, fixing him with predatory intensity. "Ah," she said, voice musical yet somehow reminiscent of metal striking metal. "The impossible child arrives. How fascinating." Issei felt frozen in place by that penetrating gaze, like prey spotted by an apex predator. Something primordial within him, perhaps the self-preservation instinct common to all living things, screamed danger. Cyrzx cleared his throat. "Lady Tiamat, may I present Rias Grimori and her peerage, including our guest, Issei Hyodo." The dragon woman, thou. She appeared entirely human save for those distinctive eyes, smiled, revealing teeth just slightly too sharp to be natural. "Hyodo, is that the name they gave you? How charmingly mundane. It's an honor to meet you, Lady Tiamat," Rias said, executing a formal curtsy. "Your presence in the underworld is unexpected." "Indeed it would be," Tiamat agreed, her gaze never leaving Issei. "Had I come for political reasons. My business, however, is personal." She approached Issei with liquid grace, circling him like a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. "You have her eyes," she commented. "Cosmic darkness captured in mortal form. But the structure of your face, that's entirely his." "You knew my parents," Issei realized, finding his voice despite his instinctive fear. "Knew them." Tiamat laughed, the sound like crystal chimes in a storm. "Oh, child of night and morning, I was bound to your father by ancient pact and fought beside your mother when the universe was young." "Knew" is an inadequate word for such connections. She completed her circuit, stopping directly before him. Without warning, she reached out to place her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. Pain lanced through him, sharp and sudden, followed by a sensation like liquid fire spreading through his veins. Issei gasped, staggering backward. Rias moved to support him, alarm clear on her face. "What did you do?" she demanded of the dragon woman. Tiamat examined her palm, where a small symbol glowed briefly before fading into her skin. "I confirmed his identity through blood resonance," she replied calmly, "and awakened something that was meant to be awakened." Heat continued to spread through Issei's body, settling into a steady warmth centered in his chest. When he looked down, a faint crimson glow emanated from beneath his shirt. "The morning star's mark," Tiamat explained, noting his confusion. "Placed upon you at birth, dormant until activated by one who shared blood oath with your father." "And what exactly does this mark do?" Cyrzx asked, tension evident in his carefully controlled voice. "It identifies him as Lucifer's heir to those with eyes to see," Tiamat replied. "It grants him access to legacies hidden throughout the realms. And," her expression grew solemn, "it signals the beginning of the prophecy's fulfillment." "The same prophecy Kuroka mentioned," Issei said. "Indeed." Tiamat's gaze swept the assembled devils. "Though I suspect she shared only a portion. The complete text contains details certain factions would prefer remain obscured." "Such as?" Rias prompted when the dragon woman didn't elaborate. Tiamat smiled enigmatically. "Such as the fact that the child of Lucifer and Nyx is destined to either heal the rifts between end supernatural realms, or destroy them entirely in the process of creating something new." She refocused on Issei. "The choice, ultimately, will be yours. As will the consequences." The weight of her words settled over him like a physical burden. "I don't understand why my birth matters so much," he admitted. "Why a union between Lucifer and Nyx creates such cosmic significance." "Because they represent fundamental forces that have remained separated since creation itself," Tiamat explained, her tone shifting to something almost academic. "Light and darkness, revelation and mystery. The Po, W are to illuminate and the power to conceal." Their union in you creates potential for both unprecedented harmony and catastrophic imbalance. She stepped closer again, though this time without touching him. You stand at a crossroads. Issei Hyodo. One path leads toward integration, bringing together what has long been sundered. The other toward dominance, using your dual nature to subjugate rather than unite. I would never want to subjugate anyone, Issei objected. Tiamat's smile turned knowing. So say all who have not yet tasted true power. Resolve is easy to maintain before temptation arrives. She turned back toward Seirzex. I've confirmed what I came to verify and activated what needed awakening. The rest lies in your hands, and his. Will you offer no guidance? Seirzex asked. Having known his parents, surely you have insights that could assist his development. The dragon woman considered this. Perhaps, though dragons make poor teachers for non-dragons, our perspectives differ too fundamentally. Her gaze returned to Issei. However, I will say this. Seek balance not through moderation but through mastery. Embrace both aspects of your heritage fully, denying neither. Only by knowing the depths of both can you truly understand how they complement rather than oppose. Without further explanation, she moved toward the hall's entrance. I'll take my leave now. The underworld's atmosphere disagrees with me after extended exposure. Will you return? Rias asked. Tiamat paused, glancing back with those unsettling draconic eyes. When the second seal breaks, I'll know. Whether I return then depends entirely on how she nodded toward Issei, handles what emerges next. With that cryptic statement, she departed, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with unanswered questions and newfound concerns. Well, Seirzex said into the ensuing silence, that was illuminating in its own way. What did she mean about a second seal? Issei asked, still conscious of the warmth pulsing steadily in his chest where Tiamat had touched him. It seems, Rias answered thoughtfully, that your awakening involves multiple stages, each with its own challenges and revelations. Wonderful, Issei muttered. More cosmic surprises to look forward to. Despite his sarcasm, he found himself examining the sensations flowing through him with analytical interest rather than fear. The mark Tiamat had activated felt right somehow, like the restoration of something that had always belonged to him rather than an alien addition. The question becomes, Seirzex said, rising from his seat as servants began to disperse now that the dramatic visitor had departed, what exactly this Morningstar's mark connects to, and whether those connections represent opportunity or danger. Both, most likely, Akeno observed quietly. Given Issei Kun's parentage, I doubt anything in his awakening will prove simple or straightforward. We should accelerate his training, Rias suggested to her brother. If Tiamat's appearance indicates increased supernatural attention, we need him better prepared for whatever comes next. Seirzex nodded agreement. I'll arrange additional resources. In the meantime, perhaps our unexpected Nekosho visitor might prove useful in stabilizing his energy fluctuations through senjutsu techniques. Kuroka, Issei clarified, noting Echo's slight tensing at the oblique reference to her sister. She offered to help with exactly that. Then I suggest you consider accepting her assistance, Seirzex advised. While maintaining appropriate caution, of course. The conversation continued, plans being made around and about Issei as if his agreement could be assumed. The sensation reminded him uncomfortably of how quickly control of his life had slipped away since the awakening began, each revelation narrowing his choices rather than expanding them. May I speak? He interrupted finally as Rias and her brother discussed training schedules. Both crimson-haired devils turned to him with mild surprise, as if they'd momentarily forgotten his agency in the matter. Of course, Rias said, looking slightly abashed. Forgive us, Issei. This isn't intended to exclude you from decisions regarding your own development. I understand you're trying to help, he acknowledged, but I need to maintain some control over what happens next. If I'm going to face all these prophecies and cosmic responsibilities, I want to do it on terms of chosen, not ones decided for me. Rather than offense, his declaration seemed to earn respect from both siblings. A reasonable position, Seirzex agreed. What would you prefer? Issei considered carefully. I want to accept Kuroka's help, but on conditions that respect Kaniko's feelings. I want to continue training with Rias's peerage, but I also want time to study my father's writings and learn more about my mother's domain. And I want, he hesitated, then pressed forward, IW. And to understand exactly what this prophecy says about my potential futures, not just fragments revealed when convenient. Rias and Searsex exchanged glances, communicating silently in the way of close siblings. Finally, Rias nodded. All reasonable requests, she said. Though the complete prophecy may be difficult to obtain, as it exists in multiple fragments across different supernatural archives. Then let me help search for those fragments, Issei suggested. It's my destiny, apparently. I should understand it fully. Agreed, Searsex said decisively. We'll begin assembling what's known of the prophecy immediately. He turned to Rias. Arrange a balanced schedule that includes both training and research. And, he added with a faint smile, perhaps allow our young heir some tea. Ime to simply acclimate to his new reality. Transformation proceeds most smoothly when not constantly forced. As the group dispersed, Issei found himself walking alongside Akeno back toward the residential wing of the mansion. The elegant half-fallen angel had been uncharacteristically quiet during the encounter with Tiamat, observing rather than participating. You're troubled, she noted perceptively as they turned down a less formal corridor. Wouldn't you be? Issei countered. Apparently, I'm cosmic destiny incarnate, with the power to either save or destroy multiple supernatural realms. It does sound rather daunting when phrased that way, Akeno agreed with a small smile. Though I notice something interesting about your response. What's that? You're questioning the burden, not denying it. Her violet eyes studied him with intelligent assessment. Many in your position would be rejecting the entire premise, insisting on returning to normal life, demanding that someone else handle such responsibility. Issei hadn't considered that perspective. I guess, it never occurred to me that denial was an option. Once I accepted that my parents are who they are, everything else follows logically, doesn't it? The powers, the prophecy, the responsibility, they're all part of the package. Akeno's smile widened. And that, Issei-kun, is why Bushu believes in you. It's not your potential power that impresses her, it's your capacity to adapt without breaking. The observation left Issei thoughtful as they continued toward his chambers. Perhaps that was what Nyx had ain't about learning resilience from Kaneko, not just physical endurance but the ability to bend without breaking under cosmic pressures. Thank you, he said finally as they reached his door. For the insight, and for helping with my training today. You're welcome, Akeno replied with a slight bow. Though I suspect our lessons have only just begun. She hesitated, then added more softly, we all carry complex legacies, Issei-kun. The weight of expectations, the shadows of our origins. What matters is what we choose to do with those inheritances. With that philosophical observation, she left him at his doorway. Inside, Issei found his chambers transformed. The codex from the library now rested on a specially prepared stand near his bed, alongside several other volumes with titles related to Devil history and Greek mythology. A note in elegant handwriting explained that Searsex had arranged these resources for his independent study. Exhaustion from the day's training and emotional revelations suddenly crashed over him. As he prepared for sleep, Issei found himself wondering what new dreams might come, what further messages his mother might send through the night that was her domain. The last thing he saw before closing his eyes was the faint crimson glow of the Morningstar's mark on his chest, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat like a second, more ancient life now awakened within him. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Divine Intervention. Dreams claimed Issei the moment his eyes closed, not the starlit communication with his mother that had become almost familiar, but chaotic fragments of memory not his own. Lightning splitting ancient skies, a garden of impossible beauty, wings of light unfurling, a throne room with 12 imposing seats arranged in a perfect circle. War between beings of celestial fire. Mountains crumbling beneath divine wrath. He woke gasping, dawn barely brightening the horizon visible through his windows. The Morningstar's mark on his chest pulsed with uncomfortable heat, as if responding to the dream memories. Sitting up, Issei pressed his palm against the symbol, feeling its rhythm gradually sync with his heartbeat until the discomfort subsided. Inherited memory, a voice observed from the shadowed corner of his chamber. Issei startled, instinctively drawing shadows around himself like a protective cloak, a defensive reaction he hadn't known he possessed until that moment. Kuroka emerged from the darkness, golden eyes gleaming with approval. Good. Your instincts are awakening alongside your conscious abilities. What are you doing in my room? Issei demanded, the shadows dispersing as his initial alarm faded. She settled at the foot of his bed with feline grace, entirely comfortable with the intrusion. Observing. Your energy fluctuations during sleep are particularly revealing about which aspects of your heritage are becoming dominant. You could have asked permission, Issei pointed out, pulling his blankets high. To cover the still glowing mark on his chest. An amused smile played across her lips. I could have, but permission is such a formal concept. Her expression grew more serious. The dreams you're experiencing, their memory fragments passed through bloodline connection. Your father's recollections of heaven before his fall, most likely. The explanation made disturbing sense. Is that normal? For devils? No. For demigods? Sometimes. She shrugged elegantly. For whatever you are, who knows? You're unprecedented. Issei sighed, running a hand through sleep-tousled hair. I keep hearing that. Unprecedented. Unique. Prophesied. It's not particularly helpful when I'm just trying to understand what's happening to me. Hence my presence, Kuroka replied, gesturing toward the mark he'd tried to conceal. The Morningstar's mark is accelerating your development, integrating aspects of your heritage that were meant to emerge gradually over years. Without proper stabilization, the process could become unpleasant. Unpleasant how? Mental fragmentation, physical pain, potentially catastrophic power discharge. She ticked off the possibilities with disturbing nonchalance. He's seal was designed for gradual dissolution. Tiamat's intervention changed that dynamic. Issei considered this, recalling Tiamat's cryptic warning about a second seal, yet to break. Can you help with this stabilization? That's what Senjutsu excels at, energy manipulation and balance. Kuroka leaned forward slightly. I can teach you techniques to integrate these awakening aspects more harmoniously, but it requires trust. Access to your internal energy flows would give me significant influence over your development. The implied vulnerability wasn't lost on Issei. That's why you came to my room without permission. You're testing boundaries. Her smile widened, revealing those slightly too sharp canines. Smart kitty. Yes, I wanted to see your instinctive reactions, how your power responds to perceived threats or intrusions. The strength of your shadow defense was impressive for someone with minimal training. And did I pass your test? Issei asked dryly. You showed appropriate caution without excessive aggression. Healthy instincts. She rose smoothly. Get dressed. We'll begin your first senjutsu lesson before the devils start their daily routines. Your energy is clearest at dawn. When night transitions to day, symbolically appropriate for your dual nature. She turned toward the door, then glanced back with mischievous eyes. Unless you'd prefer I stay while you change. I'll meet you in the garden, Issei replied firmly, suppressing the blush her teasing provoked. Kuroka laughed softly. The Eastern Meditation Pavilion in 20 minutes. Don't eat first. It muddles energy perception. After she departed, Issei took a moment to examine the mark on his chest in the mirror. The symbol resembled a stylized star with 8 points, intricate patterns flowing between each ray. As he watched, it pulsed once more with bright crimson energy before fading to what appeared like an elaborate tattoo just a shade darker than his natural skin tone. Whatever Anj Tiamat had triggered were clearly continuing, though whether toward stability or further complication remained to be seen. The Eastern Pavilion stood apart from the main gardens, nestled within a grove of trees whose silver leaves whispered in the morning breeze. Simple wooden construction contrasted with the ornate architecture of the main estate, creating a space that felt both ancient and timeless. Kuroka waited in the pavilion's center, seated in perfect meditative posture on a reed mat. She'd exchanged her provocative kimono for a close-fitting black training outfit that managed to be both practical and flattering. Her eyes remained closed as Issei approached, though her ears twitched slightly in acknowledgement of his presence. Remove your shoes and sit, she instructed without opening her eyes. Indicating a second mat positioned opposite her own. Issei complied, mimicking her cross-legged posture as best he could. Morning dew soaked through the thin material of the mat, the slight discomfort oddly grounding. Senjutsu, Kuroka began, eyes still closed, is the art of manipulating the energy of life itself. Not just personal power, but the natural energy flowing through all living things. For most practitioners, it requires years of disciplined study to perceive these flows, let alone manipulate them. Her eyes opened, fixing him with that penetrating golden gaze. You, however, have an advantage. Your mother is Nyx, primordial embodiment of night, which has always been when the boundary between seen and unseen grows thinnest. Perception beyond ordinary senses should come naturally to you. Should, Issei repeated skeptically. But does it? In answer, Kuroka extended her hand. A sphere of blue-white energy materialized above her palm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. What do you see? Quote, a ball of light, Issei replied, then frowned. No, not just light. There's movement inside it. Patterns, like currents in water. Good. Now close your eyes and tell me what you perceive. Issei obeyed, expecting darkness. Instead, he still saw the energy sphere, not with his eyes but with some other sense entirely. The currents appeared more distinct, flowing in complex patterns he somehow recognized as extensions of Kuroka herself. I can still see it, he said, surprised. But differently, more intricate. Now extend that perception outward. What else can you sense without using your eyes? Concentration furrowed his brow as Issei attempted to expand this newfound awareness. Gradually, other energy patterns emerged in his perception, the slow, steady flow of the trees surrounding them, the darting, ephemeral signatures of insects and small animals in the garden, the massive, controlled power emanating from the main estate where other devils were beginning their day. Most distinctly, he perceived Kuroka herself, a swirling nexus of energy both disciplined and wild, with currents that occasionally reached toward him like curious tendrils. Everything's alive, he murmured. Everything has patterns. Yes, she confirmed, satisfaction coloring her voice. This is the foundation of senjutsu, recognizing that all existence comprises energy in different configurations. Once perceived, these patterns can be influenced. She guided one tendril of her energy to touch his own aura. The contact sent a shiver through Issei's entire being, strangely intimate in a way that transcended physical sensation. Your energy remains chaotic, Kuroka observed. Fragments of night and morning star competing rather than cooperating. To stabilize this, we must first map the currents. What followed was unlike any training Issei had experienced with Rias's peerage. Where their methods involved external manifestations of power, creating fire, manipulating shadows, Kuroka's approach focused entirely inward. She guided him through increasingly subtle perceptions of his own internal energy, identifying where divine and devilish aspects clashed or complemented each other. Here, she said after nearly an hour of this exploration, her energy gently indicating a particularly turbulent confluence near his heart. This is where the second seal remains intact. Tiamat activated the Morningstar's mark but left this barrier untouched. Issei focused his perception on the area she indicated. Unlike the freely flowing energy elsewhere in his system, this region appeared constrained by intricate patterns that resembled neither Greek nor Devil script but something more ancient than either. What's sealed inside? He asked. Something your parents believed you weren't ready to access immediately, Kuroka replied. Possibly an aspect of your power too volatile for an untrained vessel. Her energy withdrew slightly. We won't TTEMPT to break it. That would be dangerous without proper preparation. Instead, we'll harmonize the energies around it, reducing the strain on your system. The technique she taught involved visualizing his dual energies not as opposing forces but as complementary aspects of a unified whole, night embracing morning rather than battling against it. By the session's end, Issei could maintain this harmonized state for several minutes at a time, during which the constant background tension he'd been experiencing since his awakening began noticeably diminished. Better, Kuroka approved as they concluded. You'll need to practice this meditation at dawn and dusk daily, the transition points between light and darkness when both aspects of your heritage are equally accessible. Issei nodded, feeling both exhausted and oddly refreshed. Thank you. This helps more than the external power training, at least for now. Different approaches serve different purposes, Kuroka observed, rising fluidly from her meditation posture. The devils teach you manifestation because that's how they understand power, as something to be displayed and utilized. I teach internalization because balance must begin within. She stretched languidly, her training outfit emphasizing curves that momentarily captured Issei's attention before he respectfully averted his gaze. Kuroka noticed, a mischievous smile playing across her lips. Still retaining some typical teenage male responses, "I see. That's healthy. Proof the awakening hasn't completely overwhelmed your existing personality." Heat crept up Issei's neck. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "No apologies necessary," she interrupted, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Appreciation without objectification is perfectly natural. Besides, I'm quite aware of my physical attributes." The frank acknowledgement somehow diffused his embarrassment. "Has anyone ever told you you're unusually direct?" "Frequently," Kuroka confirmed with a laugh. "Nekosho don't particularly value artifice or false modesty. We are what we are. No point pretending otherwise." The philosophy resonated with Issei in unexpected ways. Since his awakening began, he'd been struggling to integrate the various aspects of his identity: ordinary teenager, devil in training, divine heir, prophesied figure. Kuroka's straightforward acceptance of her complex nature offered a template he found oddly reassuring. "There you are," a familiar voice called from the pavilion entrance. Rias approached, dressed in a modified version of her school uniform adapted for training. "I see you've already begun today's lessons." "Senjutsu fundamentals," Kuroka confirmed, her posture shifting subtly in the presence of the devil princess, not quite submissive but acknowledging Rias's authority. "Street abilization techniques for his transitioning energy." Rias nodded, though Issei detected a hint of tension in her expression. "A valuable supplement to our scheduled training. However, the day's agenda has changed. We have a situation developing that requires adjustment to our plans." "What kind of situation?" Issei asked, sensing her concern beneath the composed exterior. Rias hesitated, changing a glance with Kuroka that suggested silent communication about his readiness for whatever news she brought. "We've received word from my brother that representatives from Olympus have requested a formal audience. Apparently, unusual energy signatures emanating from the underworld have attracted attention from the Greek pantheon." Kuroka's ears flattened slightly. That was faster than expected. The old Satan faction's attack must have generated more mystical disturbance than we realized. "They specifically asked about any anomalous entities of mixed heritage, currently under devil protection," Rias continued. "While they haven't directly mentioned Nyx or identified you by name, their interest is obvious." Cold apprehension settled in Issei's stomach. "What does this mean for me?" "It means," Rias said carefully, "that your existence can no longer remain completely confidential. My brother believes a controlled introduction is preferable to discovery. He's arranging a formal reception for the Olympian delegation this evening. With Issei present," Kuroka concluded, her tone making it a statement rather than a question. Rias nodded. "Introduced as a relative of the original Lucifer recently discovered and brought to the underworld for education, the cover story we'd already established. No mention of his maternal lineage. And if they sense it anyway?" Kuroka challenged. "Greeks have their own methods of detecting divine blood. Precautions are being arranged," Rias assured them, though her expression remained troubled. "Magical dampening, careful staging of the encounter. The objective is to satisfy their curiosity without revealing the full truth." Issei absorbed this, recognizing the diplomatic complexity involved. "Who's coming from Olympus?" "Athena," Rias replied, "goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, and mathematics. An interesting choice. Not their most powerful representative, but certainly their most perceptive and analytical." "She's coming to assess me," Issei realized. "To determine if I'm a threat." "Precisely," Rias confirmed, "which means today's training needs to focus on control rather than power expansion. You'll need to demonstrate discipline and restraint during the reception." Kuroka rose, brushing imaginary dust from her training outfit. "I'll adjust the senjutsu exercises accordingly. Energy containment rather than harmonization." "Good," Rias approved. "Akino and I will work with him on formal protocol and basic devil etiquette. Hiba can handle physical composure, how to stand, move, and present himself as a controlled young devil rather than a volatile hybrid." The methodical approach to what was essentially preparing him for inspection might have seemed cold, but Issei recognized the underlying protective intent. Rias was orchestrating his presentation to minimize risk, both to him and to the fragile peace between supernatural factions. "I won't let you down," he promised, determination replacing his initial apprehension. Something softened in Rias's expression. This isn't about meeting my expectations, Issei. It's about keeping you safe while navigating unavoidable political realities. She glanced at Kuroka. May I have a moment alone with him? The Nekosho nodded, moving with silent grace toward the pavilion exit. I'll prepare the energy containment exercises and meet you at the main training grounds in 1 hour. After she departed, Rias settled on the meditation mat Kuroka had vacated. For a moment she simply studied Issei, her turquoise eyes thoughtful. You're progressing more quickly than expected, she observed finally. Kuroka's techniques appear to be helping. They are, Issei confirmed. The internal focus balances the external power training your peerage has been providing. Rias nodded, seemingly satisfied with this integration of approaches. Good, but there's something you should understand about tonight's reception that I didn't want to discuss in front of Kuroka. Interest piqued. Issei leaned forward slightly. What is it? Athena isn't coming solely to assess a potential threat, Rias explained. She's also likely seeking confirmation of rumors regarding Nyx's activities. The primordial gods maintain an uneasy relationship with the Olympians, technically part of the same pantheon but operating according to different rules and priorities. And my mother having a child with Lucifer would definitely qualify as an activity of interest, Issei concluded. Precisely. If Athena confirms your maternal heritage, it creates complications beyond mere faction politics. It potentially indicates a primordial power making moves without Olympian oversight or approval. The implications clarified aspects of his situation Issei hadn't fully considered. So I'm not just a potential threat because of what I might become, but because my very existence suggests alliances they weren't aware of. Yes, approval flickered in Rias's eyes at his quick understanding. Supernatural politics rarely centers solely around power. Information, relationships, and perceived intentions often matter more. She hesitated, then added, there's also the matter of your potential claim to the Lucifer title. This shift in topic caught Issei off guard. I have no interest in claiming any titles, he said honestly. I'm still trying to understand what being Lucifer's son even means for me personally. I believe you, Rias assured him. But others won't. As word of your existence spreads, various factions will project their own hopes or fears onto you. The old Satan faction already views you as an abomination usurping pure devil bloodlines. Others might see you as a potential figurehead for reform or revolution. And what do you see? Issei asked quietly. The question seemed to surprise her. For a moment, her carefully maintained poise faltered, revealing something more personal beneath the political calculation. I see someone thrust into an impossible situation who's handling it with remarkable adaptability, she answered finally. Someone whose potential extends far beyond the titles or positions others might want to assign him. The sincerity in her voice warmed something in Issei's chest. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Yes, well, she said, composure returning, we should proceed to the main house. Akano is preparing a crash course in formal devil etiquette, and you'll need proper attire for tonight's reception. As they walked back through the morning gardens, Issei found himself reflecting on how quickly his reality had transformed. Less than a week ago, his greatest concern had been improving his grades enough to avoid summer remedial classes. Now he was preparing to meet a Greek goddess while concealing his divine parentage and navigating complex supernatural politics. Yet strangely, he felt more alive than ever before, more connected to himself and the world around him. Each new revelation, while overwhelming, also illuminated aspects of his identity that had always felt incomplete without his conscious recognition. You're smiling, Rias observed as they neared the mansion. Not the typical reaction to learning you'll be scrutinized by a goddess known for seeing through deception. Just thinking about how absurd my life has become, Issei replied. And yet, it feels right somehow, like I'm finally understanding parts of myself that never made sense before. Rias studied him with renewed interest. That's an unusually philosophical perspective for someone your age. Maybe it's the ancient divine blood talking, he suggested with a hint of self-deprecating humor. Her laughter lightened the moment. Perhaps, though I suspect it's or that you possess natural wisdom often obscured by ordinary circumstances. Crisis has a way of revealing core character. The observation stayed with Issei throughout the intensive day of preparation that followed. Akino's lessons in devil etiquette proved surprisingly complex, each gesture, form of address, and even posture carrying nuanced meanings within supernatural society. Kiba focused on physical presentation, teaching Issei to move with deliberate control that minimized his aura's fluctuations. Power leaks most noticeably during transitions, the blonde knight explained as they practiced formal bowing. From standing to sitting, from stillness to motion. Master these moments of change, and you master the impression you create. By late afternoon, Issei's head swam with protocols and admonitions, his body aching from maintaining unfamiliar postures designed to project controlled dignity. When Kaneko arrived with his formal attire for the evening, he accepted the respite gratefully. "How are you holding up?" he asked as she laid out components of what appeared to be an elaborate suit styled after Victorian fashion but with distinctly devilish elements, high collar, subtle crimson accents, and what seemed suspiciously like actual silver thread embroidery. Kaneko glanced up, mild surprise registering at his question. "I'm not the one meeting Athena tonight." "No, but you've been dealing with your sister's sudden reappearance in your life," Issei clarified. "That can't be easy." Something softened in her usually stoic expression. "It's complicated. We've talked a few times. Her explanations make logical sense, but logic doesn't always heal emotional wounds," Issei finished when she trailed off. Kaneko nodded, arranging cufflinks on the dressing table, silver set with small rubies. "She wants to protect you because of her oath to Nyx. I want to protect Bushu and our group because they saved me. It creates divided loyalties." The simple honesty of her assessment touched Issei. "I don't want to be the cause of further pain between you two." "You're not," Kaneko assured him with unexpected gentleness. "Our issues existed long before you appeared. Perhaps working toward a common goal, keeping you safe, might actually help us find resolution." It was the longest speech Issei had heard from the typically taciturn girl. "I hope so," he said sincerely. "For what it's worth, I think she genuinely regrets the pain her choices caused you." Kaneko arranged the final elements of his outfit before moving toward the door. "Regret doesn't change the past," she observed. "But I'm beginning to understand it might still influence the future." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "Akino will help you dress. The reception begins in 2 hours." After she departed, Issei took advantage of the momentary solitude to practice the meditation techniques Kuroka had taught him that morning. Centering his awareness on his internal energy flows, he carefully harmonized the conflicting currents, stabilizing the turbulence around the sealed area near his heart. The exercise proved more challenging than during their morning session. Anticipatory tensio regarding the evening's events created disruptions in his concentration, requiring repeated attempts to achieve the balanced state. A soft knock interrupted his third attempt. "Issei-kun," Akino called. "May I come in?" "Yes," he replied, abandoning the meditation with a sigh. Akino entered carrying additional grooming implements. She'd already changed for the evening, wearing a formal kimono in deep violet with silver obi. Her long black hair arranged more elaborately than usual with ornate silver pins. "Nervous?" she asked perceptively as she set down her items. "That obvious?" She smiled, the expression somehow both reassuring and mischievous. "Your aura is fluctuating like a teenager before their first date. Completely understandable under the circumstances. Any last-minute advice for meeting a goddess who can probably see through every attempt at deception?" Issei asked, only half joking. "Actually, yes." Akino's expression grew more thoughtful as she arranged the formal clothing components. With beings like Athena, partial truths often work better than outright lies. She'll detect deliberate falsehood instantly, but carefully phrased truths, even incomplete ones, can pass her scrutiny. "So when she asks about my heritage, focus on what you do know about your father and the devil aspects of your abilities," Akino advised. "It's not lying to emphasize one truth while not volunteering another." The suggestion made practical sense, though it left Issei morally uncomfortable. "I'm not great at deception. Consider it diplomatic selectivity rather than deception," Akino suggested, helping him into the formal shirt with practiced efficiency. "Supernatural politics requires certain flexibility with complete disclosure." As she assisted with the complex layers of his formal attire, Akeno continued providing last-minute coaching on specific Olympian protocols that differed from devil customs. The process felt strangely intimate despite its formality, her hands occasionally brushing against him as she adjusted fabric or fastened ornate buttons. "May I ask you something personal?" Issei ventured as she worked on arranging his collar. "You may ask," she replied with a smile that suggested no guarantee of answers. "Nyx called you, the priestess who teaches duality, in my dream." What did she mean? Akeno's hands stilled momentarily before resuming their work. Perspective. Most likely, as a half-fallen angel, half-human serving in a devil's peerage, I exist at the intersection of multiple supernatural identities. Has that been difficult? Issei asked, genuinely interested in her experience as someone else navigating mixed heritage. Something vulnerable flickered behind her composed expression. At times, exceedingly so. Each aspect of my heritage carries its own complications, its own pain. She secured the final element of his formal attire, stepping back to assess the effect. But it also grants unique perspective. The ability to see beyond single-faction viewpoints. That's what I need to learn, Issei realized. Not just controlling different types of power, but understanding different ways of seeing the world. Approval brightened Akeno's violet eyes. Exactly. Your heritage isn't just about abilities, Issei-kun. It's about perspective, the potential to bridge worldviews that have remained separate for millennia. The observation resonated deeply, offering a framework for understanding his situation beyond mere power dynamics. Before he could explore this further, however, another knock announced Rias's arrival. She entered already dressed in formal attire that took Issei's breath away, a crimson gown that seemed to flow like liquid around her figure, accented with black lace and subtle golden embroidery. Her hair cascaded in perfect waves down her back, crowned with a delicate tiara that marked her status within devil aristocracy. Magnificent, Akeno approved, completing her final adjustments to Issei's appearance. Both of you look appropriately impressive. Rias surveyed Issei with critical assessment that softened into approval. Indeed, you clean up remarkably well, Issei. You look every inch a devil aristocrat. The compliment warmed him unexpectedly. Thanks to Akeno's help, he acknowledged. Though I'm still not sure I can remember all the protocols we covered today. You'll do fine, Rias assured him. Remember, you're being presented as someone still learning devil customs. Minor mistakes won't seem out of character. Our guests have arrived, Akeno reported, checking a magical communication device resembling an ornate pocket watch. The reception is gathering in the main hall. Rias nodded, her expression shifting to one of focused determination. Then it's time. Stay close to me, Issei. Speak only when directly addressed, and follow my lead in all things. What about Kuroka? Issei asked, suddenly realizing the Nekosho hadn't been mentioned in the evening's preparations. Observing from a concealed position, Rias explained. Her criminal status makes official appearance impossible, but her senjutsu perception might detect things we miss. With final adjustments to their appearance, they proceeded through the mansion's corridors toward what Issei couldn't help but think of as his first diplomatic test. The elaborate formal wear felt restrictive after days of training attire, the high collar and multiple layers creating a physical reminder of the constraints being placed upon his still evolving power. They paused before massive double doors where Kiba and Kaneko waited, similarly attired in formal versions of their usual styles. The blonde knight offered an encouraging nod while Kaneko's expression remained characteristically unreadable. Though Issei thought he detected concern in her golden eyes. Remember, Rias said quietly, project calm confidence. You belong here as much as anyone in that room. With that final encouragement, she nodded to the attendants, who opened the doors to reveal a gathering that exceeded Issei's expectations in both size and supernatural diversity. The main hall had been transformed from the relatively austere space of his previous visit into something approaching throne room grandeur. Elaborate crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors polished to mirror reflection. SSIVE floral arrangements featuring blooms impossible in the human realm added bursts of color among the predominantly dark furnishings. At least 50 beings occupied the space, their nature betrayed by subtle characteristics. Two perfect features, unusual eye colors, the occasional glimpse of inhuman attributes quickly disguised. Devils predominated, but Issei detected other supernatural signatu. His awakening senses were beginning to distinguish the crackling energy of fallen angels, the earthy power of yokai, and most prominently, the sunlight-bright resonance of what could only be divine entities. Dzx occupied a position of prominence near the center of the room, engaged in what appeared to be pleasant conversation with a woman whose beauty transcended conventional human standards. Tall and statuesque, with silver blonde hair arranged in an intricate classical style, she carried herself with absolute confidence that required no overt display of power. Her eyes, storm gray and penetratingly intelligent, immediately shifted to Issei the moment he entered, assessment so intense he could almost feel it like physical pressure. Athena, Rias confirmed in an undertone, maintaining her pleasant social expression. And she's already focused on you. Remember your training. Issei straightened instinctively, employing the techniques Kiba had drilled into him for controlled movement and minimal aura leakage. As they proceeded into the room, conversations quieted momentarily before resuming with increased intensity, creating a background murmur punctuated by occasional loud GHTER that felt more political than genuine. "Ah, my dear sister," Dzx called, gesturing them forward. "And our young guest of honor. Please, join us." The summons eliminated any possibility of gradual acclimatization to the charged atmosphere. Issei followed Rias directly toward what he now recognized as the evening's true purpose, his formal introduction to Olympian scrutiny. "Lady Athena," Dzx continued as they approached, "may I present my sister, Rias Grimori, and her student, Issei Hyodo, recently discovered descendant of the original Lucifer's bloodline." Athena's gaze intensified, those storm-gray eyes seeming to peer beyond physical appearance into essence itself. Up close, her divine nature became more apparent, a subtle luminescence to her skin, an impression of Kn. Knowledge accumulated over millennia rather than centuries, power contained with such perfect control it manifested as grace rather than force. "Fascinating," she said, voice melodic yet precise, each syllable deliberately formed. "I wasn't aware any direct lineage from the original Lucifer remained undocumented." A significant discovery indeed. The statement carried subtle challenge beneath its polite surface. Issei bowed with the exact degree of respect Akeno had coached, acknowledging the goddess's status without displaying the submission expected from ordinary mortals. "The circumstances of my lineage remained obscured until recently, Lady Athena," he replied, careful to emphasize the aspects of his parentage that weren't technically falsehoods. "I myself was unaware until certain abilities began to manifest." "And what abilities might those be?" she inquired with seemingly casual interest that fooled no one present. Dzx intervened smoothly. "Perhaps demonstrations of power might be reserved for a more appropriate setting than a social gathering. Young Issei is still learning to control his heritage." "Of course," Athena agreed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Social propriety must be maintained." She returned her attention to Issei. "Though I admit professional curiosity. The original Lucifer possessed quite unique characteristics, even among the fallen. I wonder which aspects have expressed in your generation." The question represented exactly the kind of probing Rias had warned might occur, testing not just for devil abilities but for potential signs of other heritage. "Primarily affinity for light and shadow manipulations," Issei answered honestly, following Akeno's advice to offer partial truths. "Though my training has only just begun." "Light and shadow," Athena repeated thoughtfully. "Interesting combination. One might almost say, day and night." The deliberate emphasis sent a chill down Issei's spine. Before he could formulate a response that wouldn't further reveal his dual heritage, another voice joined the conversation. "Classic Lucifer traits," Akeno observed, approaching with graceful timing that suggested planned intervention. "Historical records indicate his mastery of both illumination and darkness. I've been assisting with Issei-kun's magical education." Athena shifted her penetrating gaze to Akeno, recognition flickering in her expression. "Barakiel's daughter. Another interesting genetic combination serving House Grimori." She glanced between them with renewed interest. "Your family does collect unique individuals, Lord Dzx. Diversity strengthens our society," he replied diplomatically. "The modern underworld values ability above bloodline purity." "A progressive perspective," Athena acknowledged. "Though one imagines the more traditional factions might disagree." "They're entitled to their opinions," Rias interjected with perfect aristocratic composure. "As we are entitled to form our own." Households according to merit rather than ancestry. The subtle rebuke earned an approving nod from Circex and a speculative look from Athena, who seemed to reassess Rias with increased interest. Well said, young Grimoire. Merit indeed transcends origins, at least in theory. Her attention returned to Issei. I would very much enjoy a more thorough discussion of your abilities in a more appropriate setting, young Hyodo. Perhaps a private demonstration could be arranged during my stay. The request, closer to a demand, created a momentary tension Circex smoothly dispersed. Certainly. Perhaps tomorrow afternoon. I believe the training grounds would provide suitable space for controlled demonstration. Perfect, Athena agreed. I look forward to it immensely. With a regal nod At somehow managed to convey both courtesy and dismissal simultaneously, she turned toward another group of guests, effectively ending their immediate conversation. Rias exhaled softly beside him. That went as well as could be expected. She knows, Issei said under his breath. Or at least suspects. Of course she does, Circex confirmed quietly. She's the goddess of wisdom and strategic assessment. But suspicion isn't confirmation, and she'll need the latter before taking any official position. Hence tomorrow's demonstration, Akeno observed. Indeed, Circex, expression remained pleasantly neutral for any observers, though his voice carried concern. She'll attempt to provoke manifestation of your more divine abilities, Issei-kun. We'll need to prepare accordingly. Before they could discuss specifics, social necessity required their separation as other guests approached to meet the newly revealed descendant of Lucifer. What followed was an exhausting procession of introductions, devil nobles whose names and titles blurred together, representatives from allied factions expressing carefully worded curiosity, and various supernatural entities whose interest seemed divided between political implications and genuine fascination with Issei himself. Throughout it all, he maintained the controlled poise Kiba had drilled into him, employing Kuroka's techniques to stabilize his internal energy whenever interaction became particularly stressful. The morning star's mark occasionally pulsed with warmth against his chest, especially when certain topics arose in conversation, mentions of heaven, discussions of the Great War, or references to primordial beings. Through it all, he remained acutely aware of Athena's periodic observation from across the room, her asses. Sment continuing even during her own apparently engrossing conversations with other guests. You're doing remarkably well, Rias murmured during a momentary lull between introductions. Many devil no bless struggle more with their first formal reception. I'm motivated by survival instinct, Issei replied with a hint of dry humor. Relaxing my guard seems unwise with a goddess analyzing my every move. A genuine smile brightened her features. A healthy perspective. Though I should warn you, she nodded discreetly toward an approaching figure, the next introduction may prove more challenging than Athena's scrutiny. Issei followed her gaze to a strikingly beautiful young woman with long black hair and violet eyes similar to Akeno's, though lacking their warmth. She moved with deliberate grace that somehow suggested restrained aggression rather than natural fluidity. Seraphal Leviathan, Rias explained quickly. One of the current 4 Satans and Sona's older sister. Her public persona can be disorienting. Before Issei could request clarification, the woman reached them, immediately enveloping Rias in an enthusiastic embrace that contrasted sharply with the formal atmosphere. Ria-tan, she exclaimed, voice pitched considerably higher than seemed natural for her apparent age. You've been hiding this cutie from everyone. So mean. Rias extracted herself with patience that suggested long familiarity with such behavior. Seraphal Sama, may I present Issei Hyodo? Issei, this is Lady Seraphal Leviathan, one of the 4 Satan lords who govern the underworld. Issei bowed formally as instructed for greeting Satan-class devils. It's an honor to meet you, Lady Leviathan. Seraphal studied him with an intensity that belied her frivolous affect. For a brief moment, her childlike expression slipped, revealing calculation that matched Athena's in its penetrating assessment. Then the mask returned, complete with exaggerated movements and speech patterns. So formal. Call me Levi-tan. She circled him with boundless energy, examining from all angles like an excited child with a new toy. A baby Lucifer. How exciting. Does he do any tricks yet? Deliberately provocative question contained more serious inquiry than its delivery suggested. Rias answered with diplomatic care. Issei is still learning to control his abilities, Serafal-sama. My peerage has been assisting with his training. Boring. Serafal pouted theatrically, though her eyes remained sharply observant. Lucifer was the most beautiful angel before falling. He should at least sparkle a little. Despite the absurdity of her presentation, Issei detected genuine power beneath the act, perhaps equal to Sirzek's, though manifesting differently. This wasn't merely eccentric behavior but calculated performance designed to disarm and underestimate. I'll work on sparkling for our next meeting, Lady Leviathan, he replied with respectful humor. Though I suspect it requires more advanced training than I've received so far. Delight brightened her expression. Ooh, he has personality too. Much better than those stuffy old Satan types with their purity of bloodline nonsense. She leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial stage whisper. Between us, I think mixed heritage produces much more interesting results. Just look at Ria Tan's queen. The common. She seemed deliberately calculated to provoke reaction, testing his response to suggestions of mixed heritage, while referencing Akino's half-fallen angel status. Diversity of perspective strengthens any group, Issei agreed, carefully navigating the conversational minefield. I'm grateful for the varied expertise in Rias-sama's peerage. Diplomatic answer. Serafal approved, dropping the childish act entirely for a moment. You'll need that skill in the coming days. Word travels quickly in supernatural circles, and many will be interested in your emergence. The warning, delivered with surprising seriousness given her previous behavior, confirmed Issei's growing awareness of his precarious position in supernatural politics. Thank you for the advice, he said with genuine appreciation for her momentary candor. Serafal's playful persona returned instantly. So responsible, just like my darling Sotan. She spun away with theatrical flair. I must circulate. The magical girl of the underworld has many admirers to greet. As she bounded toward another group of guests, Rias sighed softly. And that was Serafal in her restrained mode, given the formal setting. She's not what I expected from a Satan lord, Issei admitted. Few are, Rias agreed. Each of the current Satans defied expectations to earn their positions. My brother conceals tremendous power beneath courtly manners. Serafal hides political genius behind childish enthusiasm. Ajuka Beelzebub masks revolutionary thinking with scientific detachment. And Falbium Asmodeus disguises strategic brilliance with apparent laziness. The insight into devil leadership added another layer to Issei's understanding of the society he'd been thrust into. And where do I fit into this structure? As Lucifer's son but not a Satan. That, Rias said thoughtfully, is precisely the question everyone here is attempting to determine, including, I suspect, yourself. Before Issei could respond, the subtle change an ambient energy that had been gradually building throughout the evening suddenly intensified. Across the room, Athena had moved to speak privately with Sirzek, their conversation apparently serious. Despite maintained pleasant expressions, something's happening, Issei murmured, his awakening senses detecting the shift in atmosphere. Rias nodded almost imperceptibly. Akino, she called softly, summoning her queen who had been conversing with other guests nearby. Status report. Our Greek visitor appears to be making her position official, Akino reported in undertones. Based on observed interactions, I believe she's requesting formal notification of any further developments regarding Issei's training or abilities. Diplomatic language for, we're watching you, Rias translated. Not unexpected, though sooner than we'd hoped. Sirzek glanced in their direction, a subtle gesture indicating they should approach. Rias straightened imperceptibly, composure perfect as she guided their small group toward what had become the room's center of attention. Ah, perfect timing. Sirzek greeted them with flawless social grace that revealed nothing of any tension in his previous conversation. Lady Athena was just expressing interest in observing some of our training methods. Perhaps you might provide an overview of your approach with Issei, Rias. The request carried clear subtext, carefully managed disclosure rather than resistance to Olympian inquiry. Rias responded with equal diplomatic skill. We've developed a customized program integrating traditional devil magic theory with physical conditioning and energy control techniques, she explained. Given Issei's unique heritage, standard approaches required adaptation. Fascinating, Athena replied, her storm eyes moving between the devils with analytical precision. The integration of different methodologies suggests recognition of non-standard power manifestation. I wonder what prompted such creative adaptation. The question represented another probe for confirmation of mixed heritage. Before Rias could formulate a suitable response, a commotion near the hall's entrance drew everyone's attention. Guards stationed at the doors appeared to be arguing with someone attempting entry, their voices rising despite the formal setting. I don't care about your guest list, a feminine voice declared with imperious confidence. My business supersedes your protocols. The guards gave way reluctantly, revealing a woman who immediately commanded attention through sheer presence rather than overt power display. Tall and athletic with auburn hair bound in a simple braid, she carried herself with the confident grace of a natural predator. A silver bow and quiver adorned her back, unusual accessory. For a formal reception but apparently non-negotiable given the guards' defeated expressions. Artemis, Athena observed, mild surprise coloring her tone. I wasn't expecting your involvement in this inquiry. The newcomer strode directly toward their group, ignoring the whispers her arrival generated among the assembled guests. Unlike Athena's carefully diplomatic approach, everything about her projected blunt purpose. Plans change, she replied curtly to her fellow goddess. Her gaze fixed on Issei with unnerving intensity, golden eyes seeming to glow slightly in the chandelier light. So this is the anomaly. The direct address caught Issei off guard after an evening of carefully choreographed interactions. Before any of his companions could intercede, Artemis closed the distance between them with startling speed. Circling him much as Seraphal had, but with predatory assessment rather than childish curiosity. Interesting, she murmured, apparently to herself. Contradictory signatures, conflicting resonances. She stopped directly before him, uncomfortably close. What are you, exactly? The blunt question created immediate tension. Sirzex stepped forward smoothly, political smile firmly in place. Lady Artemis, welcome to the underworld. I wasn't aware Olympus was sending multiple representatives. They didn't, Artemis interrupted without looking away from Issei. I came independently. Official protocols waste time we may not have. Athena approached her fellow goddess with graceful efficiency, placing a restraining hand on her arm. Perhaps we might discuss your concerns more privately, sister. Quote, no need, Artemis replied, shrugging off the contact. My question is simple and deserves direct answer. Her gaze intensified, pinning Issei with almost physical force. You carry contradictory energy signatures, devil certainly, but something else. Something older. What is your complete heritage? The directness of the query eliminated possibility for diplomatic evasion. Before Issei could formulate any response, the Morningstar's mark on his chest flared with sudden heat, reacting to the divine pressure directed at him. He staggered slightly, one hand instinctively rising to press against the burning symbol. Artemis's eyes widened. The Morningstar's mark, she breathed, recognition instant. So it's true. Lucifer's direct bloodline. Athena moved closer, scientific interest overcoming diplomatic restraint. May we see the mark? It was believed lost with Lucifer himself. The situation had spiraled beyond careful management. Issei glanced at Rias, who gave a subtle nod. Better controlled revelation than forced exposure. With deliberate movements, he loosened his formal collar and opened the top buttons of his shirt just enough to rev. The 8-pointed star emblazoned over his heart, now glowing with visible crimson energy. The reaction from the Divine Sisters could not have been more different. Athena studied the mark with academic fascination, leaning forward to observe its pulsing patterns. Artemis recoiled as if physically struck, hand moving instinctively toward the bow on her back. Impossible, she declared, voice hardening. The mark responds as if newly activated. After all these millennia, her gaze snapped to Sirzex. Who awakened it? Only blood oath kin to Lucifer could trigger dormant resonance. Before Sirzex could answer, another energy signature flared at the edge of Issei's perception, familiar yet amplified beyond previous encounters. Shadows in the hall's corners deepened unnaturally, temperature dropping several degrees in an instant. I believe, a melodious feminine voice observed from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, that explanations are now inevitable. The chandeliers dimmed despite their magical illumination, shadows coalescing near Issei into a feminine silhouette that gradually solidified into corporeal form. Guests gasped, many stepping back instinctively as primordial power radiated through the hall, ancient beyond even the divine presence of the Olympians. Nyx, for Issei recognized his mother instantly despite never having seen her physical form outside DxD, stood beside him in manifestation that somehow remained partially shadow even in apparent solidity. Her beauty transcended conventional understanding, features perfect yet alien in their symmetry. She wore darkness as a gown, stars shifting across its surface exactly as in Issei's dreams. Her eyes contained actual galaxies where whites and irises should be. "Mother," he whispered, the word emerging unbidden. The primordial goddess placed a cool hand on his shoulder, her touch simultaneously comforting and electrifying. "My son," she acknowledged, voice carrying harmonic depths that resonated in the bones rather than merely the ears. Events accelerate beyond our careful planning. The hall had fallen completely silent, every being present, devil, divine, and other, rendered momentarily. Why speechless by the manifestation of a primordial deity whose existence was legendary even among immortals. Athena recovered first, her composed facade cracking slightly as she addressed the newcomer. "Lady Nyx, this is unexpected. Olympus had no indication you had taken interest in current affairs." "I have always maintained selective interests, daughter of Zeus," Nyx replied, the formal address subtly establishing hierarchical distance between primordial and Olympian divinity. "The well-being of my son being foremost among them." Artemis had not relaxed her defensive posture, hand still hovering near her weapon. "Your son," she repeated, voice hard with accusation. "Bearing Lucifer's mark. What have you done, Night Mother?" "Created possibility," Nyx answered simply, "as is the right of primordial forces." Without consultation, Athena noted, recovering her diplomatic tone though tension remained evident. "Without notification to Olympus or consideration of cosmic equilibrium. Primordials existed before pantheons," Nyx reminded her, stellar eyes unblinking. "We answer to necessity, not protocol." The exchange crackled with subtext beyond Issei's complete understanding. Though he grasped the fundamental conflict, Nyx had acted independently of Olympian authority, creating him without their knowledge or approval. Searsex cleared his throat, somehow maintaining calm. "Oh sure, despite the unprecedented situation. Perhaps we might continue this discussion in a more private setting. Our other guests will witness what needs witnessing," Nyx interrupted, her attention shifting to encompass the entire gathering. "Let all present understand clearly. This child stands under my protection. Any action against him will be considered action against Night itself." The declaration resonated with undeniable power, shadows throughout the hall pulsing in emphasis. Several guests, particularly those of lesser supernatural ranking, edged toward exits, clearly recognizing dangerous currents now flowing through what had begun as formal diplomatic reception. Artemis stepped forward, apparently undaunted by the primordial's display. "Your protection doesn't negate legitimate concern, Nyx. A union between primordial deity and fallen archangel creates unpredictable consequences for all realms." "The prophecy." "Artemis," Athena cut in sharply, warning evident in her tone. The exchange confirmed Kuroka's claim about a prophecy concerning Issei's birth. Before he could process this further, Nyx addressed Artemis directly. "The prophecy speaks of possibility, huntress, not certainty. Paths, not destinations." Her stellar gaze softened marginally as she glanced at Issei. "My son will choose his own way forward, informed by both aspects of his heritage but controlled by neither." "Pretty words," Artemis challenged. "But power of this magnitude rarely remains perfectly controlled, particularly in one so young and untrained. Hence his presence here," Rias interjected, finding her voice despite the overwhelming supernatural energies permeating the hall. "House Grimoire has undertaken responsibility for Issei's education and development, with full awareness of both aspects of his heritage." The declaration visibly surprised Artemis, who reassessed Rias with newfound respect. Bold position for a devil princess. "The political implications alone are secondary to doing what's right," Rias completed firmly. "Issei deserves the chance to understand his nature and determine his own path, free from either divine or devilish manipulation." Nyx's expression indicated approval, precisely why I permitted his placement under Grimoire protection. This house values individual choice alongside power, a rare combination in any supernatural faction. The conversation had shifted from confrontation to negotiation, Issei realized, a transition managed primarily through the intervention of the women surrounding him. Heir, despite his position as Satan Lucifer, had strategically allowed Nyx and Nyx to direct the exchange, lending his authority through presence rather than dominance. Athena, ever the strategist, recognized the changing dynamic. What do you propose then, Night Mother? Olympus cannot simply ignore the emergence of a being with such complex heritage. Nor would I expect ignorance from the goddess of wisdom, Nyx acknowledged. I propose observation without interference. Send your representatives, even this impetuous huntress, to witness his development if you must. But recognize his right to self-determination. The oath represented significant concession while maintaining essential boundaries. Athena considered it with evident calculation, weighing political implications against practical reality. I cannot speak for all Olympus, she said finally. But I can agree to such terms provisionally, pending consultation with Zeus and the council. Artemis appeared less satisfied but offered no further direct challenge, her golden eyes remaining fixed on Issei with unreadable expression. Then we reach preliminary understanding, Nyx concluded. She turned fully toward Issei, primordial features softening with had he recognized as maternal concern despite their alien beauty. Events move more quickly than anticipated, my son. The second seal weakens already. The statement sent apprehension through him. What happens when it breaks? Transformation, she replied simply. More complete integration of your dual nature. Powers beyond those you've manifested thus far. Her cool hand touched his cheek. It will not be easy. But you are stronger than you know. The tenderness in the gesture contrasted sharply with the cosmic power she embodied, creating a moment of profound intimacy despite the public setting. For Issei, it represented the first physical contact with the mother he'd known only through dreams, both stranger and most familiar presence simultaneously. I have questions, he said quietly. So many questions, and there will be time for answers, she assured him. But not tonight. Tonight was merely necessary assertion of certain realities. Her form began dissolving back into shadow, stars within her gown brightening as corporeal substance faded. Trust your instincts, child of my essence. And remember, balance comes not from denial of either nature, but from their true integration. With those parting words, her manifestation dispersed completely, shadows returning to normal density, temperature gradually warming to previous levels. The only evidence of her apeiron remained in the stunned expressions of the assembled guests and the lingering sensation of her touch on Issei's cheek. Heir recovered with admirable composure, addressing the silent gathering with calm authority. Well, it seems our young guest's heritage is rather more complex than initially presented. I trust everyone present recognizes the diplomatic sensitivity of this revelation. The statement carried subtle warning beneath its civilized veneer, a reminder that the underworld's leadership stood behind Issei despite the complications his existence created. Athena nodded acknowledgement. Indeed, Lord Lucifer, though I suspect diplomatic sensitivity barely begins to address the implications. She turned to Issei, her assessment now openly curious rather than guardedly suspicious. It seems our planned demonstration tomorrow has been rendered somewhat redundant. Nevertheless, I would value the opportunity to speak with you more directly, young Hyodo, or perhaps I should say, young Lucifer Nyx. The formal acknowledgement of both lineages represented significant shift from her earlier careful probing. I would welcome the conversation, Issei replied, finding his eyes steadier than expected given the extraordinary circumstances. Excellent. Athena's gaze shifted to include Nyx. Perhaps a more informal setting. The pressure of public scrutiny hardly encourages genuine exchange. I'll arrange suitable accommodation, Nyx agreed, diplomatic training asserting itself despite the evening's disruption. As the gathering gradually resumed normal interaction, albeit with dramatically altered energy as guests processed the unprecedented events, Issei found himself at the center of intensified curiosity. Where previously he'd been viewed as an interesting devil curiosity, he now represented something far more significant, living proof of cross-pantheon potential that challenged fundamental assumptions about supernatural separation. Artemis remained apart from the resuming social dynamics, her posture suggesting continued wariness rather than acceptance. When her path eventually brought her near Issei, she spoke with blunt directness that contrasted Harply with the careful diplomatic language now flowing around them. I don't trust what you represent, she stated without preamble. The union of primordial night and fallen morning star creates potential for either transcendent illumination or absolute darkness. History suggests the latter more likely. Rather than intimidation, her candor inspired similar directness from Issei. I'm not asking for trust based on my parentage, he replied. Only the chance to determine my own path rather than fulfill others' expectations, positive or negative. Something shifted in her golden eyes, not quite approval, but perhaps reassessment. Bold response for one so young. We shall see if your choices match your words when greater power awakens. She glanced toward the mark still visible at his collar. The second seal approaches dissolution. When it breaks, Huntress's eyes will be watching. With that ambiguous statement, part warning, part promise, she moved away, leaving Issei to ponder whether he'd just made an enemy or perhaps, improbably, the beginning of reluctant respect. Rias appeared at his side, providing welcome familiar presence amidst the increasingly overwhelming social currents. You're handling this remarkably well, she observed quietly. Many would have collapsed under such pressure. I'm not sure I have the luxury of collapsing, Issei admitted. Everything seems to be accelerating beyond anyone's control, even my mother's, apparently. The appearance of a primordial deity in person rather than through dream communication certainly suggests escalating stakes, Rias agreed. Her expression grew thoughtful, though I wonder if her manifestation was entirely reactive or partially strategic. The observation gave Issei pause. You think she planned this revelation? But why not just tell us beforehand? Perhaps to ensure authentic reactions, Rias suggested. Or to establish certain power dynamics that preemptive warning might have allowed others to prepare for and potentially counter. The possibility that even this apparent disruption might represent calculated moves in cosmic chess made Issei's head spin. Before he could pursue this line of thought further, Akeno approached with subtle urgency in her normally composed features. Bushu, we may have a situation developing, she reported in undertones. Kaneko has detected unusual energy signatures approaching the estate boundaries. Not immediate threat level, but definitely unauthorized observation. Rias frowned. The old Satan faction again. Unlikely given their previous direct approach, Akeno replied. These signatures are more diverse. Multiple factions, possibly coordinating. Word travels quickly in supernatural circles, Issei recalled Seraphal's warning from earlier in the evening. Indeed. Rias's expression hardened with decision. We need to adjust security protocols immediately. Akeno, alert my brother discreetly. I'll coordinate with estate defenses. As They moved to address this new development, Issei found himself momentarily alone amidst the continuing reception. The brief solitude offered welcome opportunity to process the evening's extraordinary events. From diplomatic reception to divine confrontation to his mother's unprecedented personal appearance. The Morningstar's mark had settled into steady warmth rather than painful heat, though he remained acutely conscious of its presence. Whatever changes Tiamat had triggered continued progressing beneath conscious perception, preparing him for the second seal, both Nyx and Artemis had referenced with such significance. Quite the debut into supernatural society, observed a voice beside him. Kiba had approached silently, his formal attire somehow remaining pristine despite the evening's tensions. How are you feeling? The simple, human question cut through Issei's swirling thoughts about cosmic implications and prophecies. Overwhelmed, he admitted honestly. Everything's moving so fast. A week ago I was a normal high school student. Now I'm apparently the focus of multiple supernatural factions' attention, with transformation pending and some prophecy hanging over my head. Kiba nodded understanding. The supernatural world rarely allows gradual adjustment. Crisis tends to force rapid adaptation. He smiled slightly, though few experience quite such dramatic introduction as primordial divine intervention during their first formal reception. The understatement startled a laugh from Issei, the moment of humor providing unexpected relief from accumulated tension. Quote, I guess I'm overachieving in the dramatic entrance department. Decidedly, Kiba agreed. His expression grew more serious. For what it's worth, you've handled tonight with remarkable composure. Even Bushu was impressed, and she maintains high standards. The simple compliment meant more to Issei than the various formal acknowledgments he'd received throughout the evening. Thanks. That actually helps. Good. Because I suspect challenges are only beginning. Heba nodded discreetly toward where Searsex now conferred with several senior devils, their expressions suggesting serious discussion despite maintained social facades. Political implications of your full heritage becoming public will reverberate throughout the supernatural world. You'll need allies beyond just House Grimoire. Are you offering? Issei asked, only half joking. Heba's response carried unexpected sincerity. I am. Not just out of loyalty to Bushu, but because I recognize something in your situation that resonates with my own experience, being defined by origins rather than choices. The parallel hadn't occurred to Issei before, but he immediately recognized its validity. Heba's history with the Holy Sword project had marked him as something separate from ordinary devils, just as Issei's dual heritage now marked him as neither fully devil nor fully divine. I appreciate that, Issei said, meaning it completely. Their conversation ended as Rias returned, concern evident beneath her maintained social composure. We need to conclude our participation in this reception, she informed them quietly. Security concerns require adjustment to our arrangements. The observers Akino detected, Issei asked. Rias nodded. Multiple factions have apparently sent representatives to monitor the estate foe. Lowing your mother's rather dramatic announcement. Nothing overtly hostile yet, but the situation requires caution. As they made diplomatic farewells to key guests, Athena confirming their meeting for the following day. Artemis maintaining watchful distance, Seraphol offering surprisingly genuine encouragement disguised as playful banter, Issei couldn't shake the sensation of standing at a precipice. Each interaction, each revelation seemed to push him closer to some fundamental transformation beyond his complete understanding. The morning star's mark pulsed against his chest in rhythm with these thoughts. As if responding to his growing awareness of impending change. Whatever came next, the careful plans for gradual integration into supernatural society had been thoroughly disrupted by this evening's events. His mother's manifestation had made one thing abundantly clear: Issei Hyodo, ordinary high school student, had been permanently replaced by Issei Lucifer Nyx, living embodiment of unprecedented cosmic convergence. The implications of that transformation extended far beyond his personal journey into the fundamental structure of supernatural coexistence. As they finally departed the reception, Kuroka materialized from shadows near the private wing in trance, her expression uncharacteristically serious. Dramatic evening, she observed. The second seal weakens more rapidly than anticipated. We need to accelerate your stabilization training immediately. Now, Rias asked, surprise evident. After everything that's happened this evening. Precisely because of everything that's happened, Kuroka countered. The energies stirred by Nyx's manifestation, combined with proximity to two Olympians, has accelerated the dissolution process. If he enters sleep without proper stabilization, the seal could rupture uncontrolled. The warning eliminated any thought of postponement. Despite physical and emotional exhaustion, Issei recognized the necessity. What do we need to do? Full senjutsu immersion. Kuroka replied, not just the basic harmonization we practiced this morning, but complete energy restructuring to prepare your system for the influx when the seal breaks. Rias hesitated, clearly weighing risks against necessity. Will this be safe? Define. Safe. Kuroka responded with grim humor. Safer than uncontrolled rupture during unconsciousness, certainly. But comfort isn't an option regardless of approach. Do it, Issei decided, not waiting for further discussion. If this helps me maintain control when the next stage hits, it's worth whatever discomfort is involved. Approval flashed in Kuroka's golden eyes. The Eastern Pavilion again. 20 minutes. Change into something less restrictive than formal attire. She glanced at Rias. You should be present. Your devil energy provides necessary counterbalance to the techniques I'll employ. As the Nekosho disappeared back into shadow, presumably to prepare whatever full immersion entailed. Rias studied Issei with concern that transcended mere political interest. You don't have to push yourself beyond endurance, she said quietly. Despite appearances, there are options besides immediate crisis response. The consideration touched him deeply. I appreciate that, but I'd rather face this prepared than be blindsided by whatever comes next. He managed a tired smile. Besides, I'm getting used to the constant state of supernatural emergency that seems to be my life now. Rias returned the smile, though worry remained evident in her eyes. Very well. 20 minutes in the Eastern Pavilion. I'll bring Akano as well. Her experience with mixed energies may prove useful. As they parted to prepare for this unexpected extension to an already extraordinary evening, I found himself reflecting on how quickly adaptation occurred in Crisis. A week ago, the idea of midnight senjutsu immersion with a criminal nekosho to prepare for divine energy integration would have seemed like absurd fantasy. Now it represented simply the next necessary step in an accelerating journey toward unknown destination. The morning star's mark pulsed in what felt almost like anticipation. The second seal approaching dissolution, whether he felt prepared or not. Whatever emerged when it broke would fundamentally alter his developing identity yet again, another transformation in a process that seemed to offer no stability. Only continuous evolution toward something unprecedented in supernatural history. As he changed from formal attire into simple training clothes, Issei caught his reflection in the chamber's mirror. For a brief moment, he thought he glimpsed something beyond his normal appearance, a suggestion of light emanating from within, shadows moving independently around his form. His eyes containing hints of both starlight and flame. The vision passed quickly, but its implication remained clear. The external political complications revealed this evening represent only the visible manifestation of a much more profound personal transformation occurring within. Prophecy, divine intervention, and supernatural politics would continue swirling around him, but the true challenge lay in maintaining his core identity amidst powers attempting to redefine him according to their own expectations. Balance through integration, not denial, he murmured, recalling his mother's parting wisdom. Whatever came next, that principle would guide his approach, embracing both aspects of his heritage while refusing to be defined solely by either. With renewed determination despite exhaustion, Issei headed toward the Eastern Pavilion, where the next phase of his accelerating journey awaited. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.